Chapter 725. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are available here. In the study of Zhonghe Palace, the monarch was reading through a mountain of memorials. The monarch was a tyrant and a madman, but he was not slacking off on the road of ruling the country diligently. Zhang Dequan was not around as he had gone to the Grand Preceptor Palace. The one serving him was Zhang Dequan's godson, also surnamed Zhang. The people in the palace called him Little Zhang. Little Zhang imitated his godfather's usual way of serving the monarch. He fanned when he should and poured tea when he should. He did not say much. However, when Little Zhang was fanning halfway, the monarch suddenly said in a deep voice, "Stand down." Little Zhang trembled in fright. What happened to His Majesty? Was he not serving the monarch well enough? The monarch said coldly, "Call Zhang Dequan here." "Yes." "Wait." "Your Majesty." "Forget it." "Forget it." "Who is it?" "Forget it, forget it." "You go, or forget it." "You don't have to go." Serving His Majesty was indeed not a job that an ordinary person could do. If his godfather was here, he would definitely understand His Majesty's meaning, but he did not. His Majesty had already beaten countless annoying eunuchs to death. Would he also end up without a corpse left behind? If he had known, he would not have curried favor with his godfather and asked for this job. "Your Majesty, Commandant Guan requests an audience," a eunuch reported outside the door. "Come in," the monarch said and frowned at Little Zhang. "Fan him." Little Zhang was relieved. He grabbed the fan and continued fanning the monarch. Commandant Guan Wang Su was here to report to the monarch about the investigation. Wang Su cupped his hands and said, "Your Majesty, I went to the forest where they encountered the assassin and did not find any useful clues. The people from the Commandant's manor wanted to capture the medicine boy for questioning, but they were stopped by the people from the Grand Preceptor Palace." The monarch snorted. "You went to the Grand Preceptor Palace to capture someone. You are very bold." Wang Su lowered his head. This subordinate knows his mistake. Although the rearguard commandery was His Majesty's trusted aide, its status in the imperial court was still inferior to the imperial preceptor hall. There was nothing wrong with capturing a medicine boy for interrogation. The only mistake was that he wanted to do it in the state preceptor's hall. How could the imperial preceptor hall face this? In fact, if the former crown princess was not waiting for the operation, Xiao Lulang would have been called to the rearguard commandery to cooperate with the investigation. "Continue investigating," the monarch said. "Yes." Wang Su cupped his fists. This subject will take his leave. He had come here to test His Majesty's attitude and see if he would allow him to take someone from the Grand Preceptor Hall. It seemed that the Imperial Preceptor Hall still held an unshakable position in His Majesty's heart. After Wang Su left, the monarch continued to force himself to calm down and read the memorials. All of a sudden, a little bean was peeking out from outside the door. He seemed to want to come in, but was a little hesitant. The moment the monarch looked over, she retracted her little head. The monarch said calmly, "I've seen you. Come in." "Okay." The young Canton princess climbed up the high threshold and jumped in. She did not walk around the desk to the king's side as usual. Instead, she politely stood in front of the desk, wishing that she could be thousands of miles away from the king. The distance between her and the king would never be able to touch her little butt. "Don't you have class today?" the monarch asked. "School is over," the young Canton princess said. "What's the matter?" the monarch asked. The young Canton princess twiddled her little fingers and rolled her eyes. "I want to go outside the palace." The young Canton princess didn't know about Shangguan Yan's matter. No one would talk about this kind of thing with a child, and no one dared to gossip in front of her. Therefore, she didn't know that the monarch had something on his mind. The monarch's face was as bad as ever, but even if he didn't have anything on his mind, the young Canton princess was already used to it. The monarch, "Where do you want to go?" The young Canton princess, The State Preceptor Hall. The monarch, why do you want to go to the State Preceptor Hall? The young Canton princess said with a guilty conscience, just for fun. She lost her uncle's thrush bird. She heard that the State Preceptor was omnipotent, so she wanted to ask him to help her make an identical thrush bird, so that she didn't have to lie and say that she lent the thrush bird to her classmate. The young Canton princess said in a childish voice, Your Majesty, take me there. The monarch picked up a booklet and said, I'm very busy. The young Canton princess said wittily, Let Eunuch Zhang take me there. Eunuch Zhang was stunned. The monarch said, Zhang de Quan is not here. The young Canton princess opened her mouth. The monarch blocked her way in a second and said, No one else can. The young Canton princess closed her mouth. The monarch thought that the little bean would use her invincible crying attack, but who would have thought that she didn't? The young Canton princess hung her little head and arms and walked away sadly. The monarch, Don't you want to struggle? State Preceptor Hall. Zhang de Quan paced back and forth in the corridor so many times that he felt that the soles of his shoes were worn out. He looked at the iron door that was guarded by 2 men of sacrifice and said anxiously, It's been more than 2 hours. Why hasn't she come out yet? Is the treatment not going well? He patted his palm with the back of his hand and said, What should we do? What should we do? In the operating room, the operation was coming to an end. The pedicle screws had been inserted into the spine, and the next step was to fix these screws with a metal connecting rod. Traditional surgery used a large incision to completely expose the wound, and the connecting rod could be directly inserted into the pedicle screw slots. However, Gu Jiao was doing percutaneous minimally invasive surgery, so she had to use a special rod inserter to insert the rod from the tail of the pedicle screws, and then cross the slots of each nail. This was a subcutaneous puncture, and the slots were only so big. Gu Jiao's hand couldn't shake at all, otherwise, it wouldn't be able to go in. The State Preceptor looked at Gu Jiao without blinking. Fortunately, Gu Jiao's hand was very steady. Seal the cap, Gu Jiao said. The State Preceptor handed the cap to Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao first tightened the cap on the side without the rod inserter, then took out the rod inserter on the other side, and lifted the cap on the other side. Finally, she removed the tail rod and sutured the wound. Gu Jiao took out the protein thread and did an intradermal suture for Shangguan Yen. This way, she didn't need to remove the suture, and it would look more beautiful after recovery. The only problem was that it was more difficult than an extradermal suture. You are very attentive to her, the State Preceptor said. Not bad, Gu Jiao said. The State Preceptor and Gu Jiao packed up the medical supplies and asked, How is your brother's recovery? Gu Jiao raised her eyebrows and said, Not bad. Gu Jiao introduced her as a friend to the State Preceptor, but during the operation, Gu Yen called her sister, so Gu Jiao didn't hide it. Anyway, he knew too much, so he didn't lack this information. After the operation was completed, the State Preceptor called an experienced disciple to come over and use the State Preceptor's special stretcher to send Shangguan Yen to the side room. Gu Jiao, oh, he also knows how to make a stretcher. The State Preceptor is not bad. When Zhang de Quan saw Shangguan Yen being pushed out, he rushed forward and asked, Is the former crown princess okay? The State Preceptor looked at Gu Jiao and said, Thanks to Dr. Xiao, the operation was very successful. Ah. Zhang de Quan looked at Gu Jiao in amazement. He really didn't expect this young man's medical skills to be so brilliant. He didn't understand the difficulty of the operation. Xiao Lulang was the first person to be called a doctor by the State Preceptor. Thank you, Dr. Xiao. Zhang de Quan also changed his words, I will report your contribution to the Emperor. Gu Jiao directly handed him a list. Zhang de Quan was stunned. This is, Gu Jiao. The consultation fee, medicine fee, let your Emperor pay, no credit. Zhang de Quan. The State Preceptor still had some affairs to deal with in the hall, so he left first. Before leaving, he asked someone to call you he. Gu Jiao entered the room with a small medicine box. The other 2 disciples put Shangguan Yen on the bed and then retreated. Gu Jiao's operation directly went from noon to the afternoon. The weather was a bit hot, but fortunately, the room was ventilated enough. The breeze blew the fragrance of bamboo in the courtyard, making people not so dry. Shangguan Yan's operation was done with general anesthesia. At this time, the anesthetic effect had not yet worn off, so she was sleeping soundly. Her small basket was on the table, but Xiao Hang was not there. Huh? Where is husband? Gu Jiao also put the small medicine box on the table. As soon as her voice fell, Xiao Hang came in with a medicine basket. His expression was somewhat complicated. Seeing Gu Jiao, he was stunned at first, then looked at Shangguan Yan on the bed. You, how are you? Not Shangguan Yan, but how are you? Not only the one who was more seriously injured. Gu Jiao lightly said, I'm fine, she's also fine. The operation was very successful. Will the stitches be removed in a few days? Xiao Heng's impression was that the stitches were removed during the operation. Generally, after removing the stitches, the patient would recover. No need to remove the stitches. Gu Jiao shook her head, but the nails will be removed in half a year to a year. The specific situation depends on her recovery. Nails. Xiao Heng's pupils shrank. Gu Jiao said, there are 8 screws in her spine. Xiao Heng's eyes were cold, his big hands tightly clenched into fists. His mind flashed the back of her seriously digging the watermelon, and the fear of being rejected by him when she handed the watermelon to him, and the hurt and loneliness that flashed in her eyes when he didn't reach out to take it. He didn't know that she would become like this, he didn't know. Gu Jiao gently pulled Xiao Heng's cold fingers. She will get better. Xiao Heng grabbed Gu Jiao's hand, like grasping the last trace of light and reason in the darkness. His mood gradually calmed down. Well, she will get better. He put the medicine basket on the table. The two people's hands didn't separate. They looked at each other and opened their mouths at the same time. Your feet, one sprained, and the other was scratched. It wasn't too obvious at first, but after standing for a long time, the two people's feet were swollen high, almost bursting their shoes. Let me see. Let me see. The two people spoke in unison again. Gu Jiao curved her lips and said, It's okay, I've applied medicine. I've also applied it. Xiao Heng said. Even so, the two still insisted on looking at each other's wounds. Gu Jiao's feet were frighteningly swollen, but it wasn't serious. Xiao Heng's wound was deeper, so Gu Jiao reapplied medicine and bandaged it. Gu Jiao put away the gauze and scissors. Xiao Heng looked at her busy little figure and asked, How did you get rid of Han Yi? Gu Jiao told him about Gu Chongqing's appearance. Unfortunately, Qi Xian suddenly appeared and rescued Han Yi. Otherwise, he would have definitely died under Gu Chongqing's sword. Of course, Han Yi shouldn't be happy too early. Gu Chongqing cut off 2 of his hamstrings. Even if he didn't die, he would be half a cripple. Gu Jiao sat down on the stool next to Xiao Heng and pointed at the medicine basket on the table. Right, what's this? Xiao Heng said, State Teacher Palace's eldest disciple, Yi Qing, just came over. He said that State Teacher prepared medicine for you. And I didn't ask him for any medicine. Gu Jiao put the medicine basket on her lap and casually flipped through it. I don't really need it, so I don't need it. It seemed that Yi Qing's medicine was fake, but the message was real. Was it his own idea, or was it State Teacher's order? If it was State Teacher's order, why would State Teacher do this? He even let him see the portrait of the imperial grandson. If he was really just an ordinary medicine boy, State Teacher wouldn't do this. But he clearly changed his appearance, so how did State Teacher recognize him? Could it be that the rumors were true, that the State Teacher of Great Yen knew everything from astronomy to geography, could divination, and could predict fate? Knock, knock, knock. There was knocking on the door. I'm State Teacher Palace's disciple, Yu He. Is young Master Xiao here? I had the kitchen make some food and bring it to you. Gu Jiao yawned. Come in. Yu He stepped in and put the food box on the table. I'll be next door. If young Master Xiao needs anything, feel free to call me. Okay. Gu Jiao said. Yu He looked at the two men tightly holding hands. He opened his mouth, but didn't say anything. He turned around and walked out. Although they were men, but they were quite compatible. Xiaoheng didn't have any appetite. But then he remembered that Gu Jiao also hadn't eaten anything all day, so he asked, "Are you hungry?" Gu Jiao yawned again. I'm okay. Xiaoheng asked softly, "Are you tired?" Gu Jiao sat up straight, her eyes as big as copper bells. "I'm not tired." Xiaoheng said, "Then eat something before you sleep." Gu Jiao, "Okay." In the next second, Xiaoheng's shoulder sank. Gu Jiao's small head leaned down and fell asleep. Xiaoheng felt a burst of heartache and sadness. He put down the lid of the food box, held Gu Jiao's head with his hand, and slowly stood up. His arms went around her back and knees, and gently carried her to the small bed. Her energy was as exuberant as little Jing Kong. She rarely got tired like this. She said it lightly, but the fight with Han Yi was definitely not that simple. Xiaoheng gently rolled up her sleeves and saw the hideous wound. 1, 2, 3. She stood on the operating table with her swollen feet and raised the scalpel with her scarred arms. Xiaoheng's eyes were slightly hot, and his chest was swollen. Perhaps only at such a time did he dare to show undisguised emotions in his eyes. He didn't want to stand behind and watch the people around him get hurt one by one. Since he couldn't stay out of the whirlpool, he would let the Han family, the crown prince, and all the people who wanted to trample on them, get involved. How old is the crown prince? 19. Do you know his exact birthday? It seems to be in the 12th lunar month. What a coincidence. My birthday is also in the 12th lunar month. It's New Year's Eve. Xiaoheng sat quietly by the table, looking at the portrait he brought from the library. Then, he ground the ink, picked up the brush, and dipped it in a drop of ink. Your Majesty. A carriage stopped at the gate of the State Preceptor Hall. The disciples of the State Preceptor Hall hurriedly came forward to salute. The king led the 4-year-old princess out of the carriage. Zhang Dequan followed beside them. The king pointed at the towering gate in front of them and said, "This is the State Preceptor Hall that you wanted to come to." The princess, "Wow." The king snorted, "What's there to wow about? It's not as big as the palace." Then I still have to wow. She was a child with a sense of ceremony. After the king got out of the carriage, he let go of the princess's hand and let her walk on her own. His strides were bigger than usual, and it was difficult for the princess to keep up. The king went straight to the Qilin Hall. Just as he reached the gate, he ran into the crown prince and his entourage. The entourage was the crown prince's guards, and a few servants carrying brocade boxes. Prince Ming didn't come because he was grounded by the king. When the crown prince saw the king, he bowed respectfully. "Father." The princess politely greeted, "Cousin Crown Prince." The crown prince smiled pleasantly. "Light Shuer is here too." The princess nodded. "Yes, I'm here to play." "What are you doing here?" the king asked the crown prince. The crown prince said, "Father, I'm here to visit third sister." The king's face darkened and said to the crown prince, "Who told you that she's your sister?" The crown prince hurriedly bowed. "Father, please calm down. I've misspoken, please forgive me." Humph. The king coldly entered the hall of the Qilin Hall and walked to the corridor on the right. The crown prince respectfully followed the king, slightly half a step behind. As he walked, he said casually, "I've just received the news, Han Yi. He had an accident." The king said lightly, "What can happen to him?" "He was still in the palace this morning." The crown prince said calmly, "It happened after he left the palace. On the way back, he was plotted against and his legs were seriously injured. The whereabouts of the assassin is still unknown." Before he finished, the king pushed open the door to the room where Shangguan Yen was resting. They saw a tall and handsome figure sitting by the bed. He was wearing a plain white gown, and his hair was as black as ink. His hair was tied behind his head with a white ribbon. A light breeze blew by, causing his hair tie and black hair to flutter, and it slowly emitted a scholarly temperament that was like an ink painting, yet it also faintly revealed a trace of the nobility of the imperial family. "Who are you?" the crown prince frowned and asked. The other party stood up and turned around unhurriedly. The crown prince suddenly had an ominous premonition. "I can't let him turn around. I can't." No, unfortunately, it was too late. Not only did he turn around, but he also revealed a face that was almost the same as the young man in the portrait. Auspicious phoenix eyes with a mole. A 19-year-old handsome face with a trace of clean youth. The crown prince's face suddenly changed. The king looked at Xiao Hang in a daze and walked toward him step by step. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more wonderful content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_89669666812. HTML Genius remembered this site's address in a second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, m. zhbqg.com. Chapter 726. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are available here. Xiao Heng's clothes were not made of very expensive fabric, but when he wore a plain shirt, he still looked handsome and magnificent. The room was very quiet. No one knew if it was because they were mesmerized by him, or because of the king's reaction. Everyone didn't dare to breathe. Or maybe both. The crown prince summoned his courage and called out, "Father, father?" The king didn't hear him, or maybe he heard and ignored him. From the door to the bed, the king took a long time to walk the short distance of more than 10 steps. He was already past the age where he would be excited about something. His myriad of emotions were hidden in his weather-beaten eyes. He came to the front of the child. The last time the two met face to face, the imperial grandson was only a 5-year-old child. He was less than 2 years old when he returned to Chengdu with Shangguan Yan. When he was 3 years old, the Shenyuan family rebelled. When he was 4 years old, the Shenyuan family was destroyed. When he was 5 years old, he was imprisoned in the imperial mausoleum with the crown princess. Since then, the king could only see him from afar in the state preceptor's palace almost every 2 years. But every time, the king would ask the state preceptor to draw his portrait, so he recognized this child, no matter how far he was. The king stopped and stared at Xiao Heng. Xiao Heng's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. "Your Majesty?" Everyone was stunned. The king was stunned. "Do you still remember me?" Xiao Heng. "Wait, shouldn't I remember you? I come back to Chengdu every 2 years. Don't you two see each other?" This kind of small situation was naturally not difficult for Xiao Heng. Xiao Heng glanced at the crown prince, who still hadn't recovered from the shock, and said without changing his expression, "That person called you father. I think, except for His Majesty, no one in the Yen kingdom can afford this title." The king came back to his senses. "So you just recognized me. No wonder you left so quickly in the carriage last time." Xiao Heng paused for a moment before he realized what carriage, what last time. "No way. Are you that bald old man over there?" This happened the night he was chased by Han Yi. The men of sacrifice who came to save him threw him into a carriage. The carriage was split open, and he only recognized Zhang Dequan. The monarch asked, "Since you've come to Chengdu, why don't you show up? Why didn't you return to the palace to find me?" Xiao Heng lowered his eyes and said with a sad face, "Because someone is trying to kill me, my mother told me to hide and not come out. But when I heard that my mother was injured, I really can't continue to hide." The monarch's face darkened. The crown prince was a little surprised. First of all, he didn't recognize Xiao Heng. When he first saw him, he really thought that Shangguan Qing had returned. It wasn't until he heard the word, kill, that he snapped out of his daze. He didn't send anyone to kill Xiao Lulang. From the beginning to the end, he only dealt with Xiao Lulang. That boy's original name was Xiao Heng. His father was Xiao Ji, Marquis Xianping of Zhao Country. When he was 14 years old, he sent someone to assassinate Xiao Heng. Who knew that Xiao Heng faked his death and escaped and survived as Xiao Lulang. Sometimes, the crown prince habitually called him Xiao Lulang. But it didn't make sense. Hadn't the mole under Xiao Heng's right eye been removed? So, was this Shangguan Qing or Xiao Heng? He felt that it was more likely to be Xiao Heng. After all, Xiao Heng was in Chengdu. On the contrary, there had been no news of Shangguan Qing for a long time. But Xiao Heng didn't know his background, did he? How could he come to pretend to be Shangguan Qing? The crown prince's mind was in a mess. There was no way for him to sort out his thoughts on this occasion. On the other hand, the young commandery princess at the side skipped in. The monarch introduced, Light Shui, this is Shangguan Qing. According to seniority, you should call her little aunt. The young commandery princess went to Lingbo Academy for a long time and always interacted with little Jing Kong, who was her age. She almost forgot that she was a junior. She quickly straightened her back and looked up at Xiao Heng with a serious face. She said, I am Shangguan Shui. Ah. This person was so good-looking. She really wanted to grab her face and scream. The young commandery princess had actually met Xiao Heng on the first day of class at Lingbo Academy. However, at that time, Xiao Heng was wearing the uniform of Kanglan Women's Academy. His face was covered with a veil, so no one could see his appearance. Xiao Heng pretended that it was the first time he met the young commandery princess. He knelt down on one knee and looked at the little girl at the same level. He smiled and said, Hello, Aunt Light Shui. Countless pink bubbles appeared on the young commandery princess's head. This nephew was so cute. Unlike Ming Junwang, that annoying fellow. From today onwards, she would protect him. The young commandery princess's eyes were so bright that they could sparkle like stars. However, she tried to be reserved and calm on the surface. She said, Well, hello, little nephew. Shangguan Qing followed his mother's surname, which was somewhat similar to the child of a woman's son-in-law. Therefore, he was not the emperor's grandson. He should not call the emperor grandfather, but imperial grandfather. However, Xiao Heng would not easily call him imperial grandfather. Based on the emperor's attitude towards him, Xiao Heng had a preliminary judgment of the emperor's grandson's position in the emperor's mind. The emperor cared about this grandson to a higher degree than he had imagined. Xiao Heng's decision was actually very risky. If the emperor did not like Shangguan Qing, then he would have exposed himself in vain. There were two people lying on the two beds in the room. One was Shangguan Yen, who had just finished an operation and was still in a coma. The other was Gu Jiao, who was so tired that she fell asleep. The emperor's eyes swept over the two people and finally fell on Shangguan Yan's body. He asked, Did the doctor say how is your mother's condition? Xiao Heng looked at the sleeping Gu Jiao, clenched his fingers and said, I heard from the doctor surnamed Xiao that my mother broke her spine in 2 places. In order to save my mother's life, 8 nails were inserted into my mother's back. Iron nails into the bone. The emperor's aura instantly turned cold. His murderous aura instantly filled the entire room. The young commandery princess, who was not afraid of him, subconsciously jumped to Xiao Heng's feet. She turned her head to look at the emperor and hugged Xiao Heng's thigh, becoming his little nephew's leg accessory. Xiao Heng did not move and let her hang there. The emperor was very angry about the crown princess's serious injury. It was unknown whether it was because of the remaining father-daughter relationship or because the emperor's prestige was provoked. Xiao Heng secretly planned in his heart what to say next. I heard that my mother slipped and fell from the hillside. The emperor looked at him. My mother's martial arts were abolished before she went to the imperial mausoleum. This matter was known to everyone and was not a secret. Xiao Heng had already heard about it. But the next few words depended on Xiao Heng's guess based on Shangguan Yan's performance in Tianxiong Pavilion. But these years, in order to train my body, my mother would accompany me to practice martial arts. I am not talented and did not learn much, but my mother learned a little bit. Directly saying that Shangguan Yan practiced martial arts again, it would seem that she had bad intentions. But if she said that she taught Shangguan Qing, who was weak and sickly, there was no doubt. The emperor recalled Shangguan Yan's appearance when she climbed over the wall of the cold palace. Her martial arts were indeed a bit mediocre. She shouldn't be too powerful. Otherwise, she wouldn't have crawled out of the palace through the dog hole. Martial Aunt Nan was also abolished of her martial arts. Xiao Hang knew the highest level of martial arts that could be achieved if she practiced martial arts again. Therefore, he did not advocate Shangguan Yan's martial arts. He then said, "My mother is very clever and has a little martial arts. I don't believe that she would fall like this. That's the imperial palace, ah. Is there someone who dares to do something to your mother in the imperial palace?" The crown prince wanted to say so, but if he really said so, it would make him look very suspicious. The crown prince strode forward and personally moved a stool for the emperor to sit down by the bed. Oh, filial piety is still his. He actually let the emperor stand for so long. Imperial father. The crown prince helped the monarch to sit down and said with a pained expression, "This son also feels that there is something fishy about this matter. Since you have already grounded third Shangguan Yan, this son believes that she will not run out of Zhaoyang Hall without permission. Perhaps she found someone suspicious, so she chased after them." My goodness, on the surface, he said that Shangguan Yan's injury was suspicious, but in fact, he secretly emphasized that Shangguan Yan disobeyed the emperor's ban. Who told you to run out of Zhaoyang Hall in the middle of the night? If you obediently listened to the emperor's words, wouldn't everything be fine? If this is not asking for it, then what is it? The young Junju didn't understand what they were talking about. She hung motionlessly on her nephew's leg, like a confused little fruit. Xiao Heng's eyes were cold, and with the temperament of a young man, he said, "How does your Royal Highness know that my mother was lured out and not kidnapped?" The crown prince choked. "This," Xiao Hang coldly said, "I heard that not long after my mother returned to the imperial palace, your Royal Highness ordered the guards to hurt my mother." The crown prince refuted, "I didn't. It was the guards who did it. I wanted to stop them, but it was too late. The cause was your mother pushed me. She pushed me down the steps of the pavilion. Do you know how high the pavilion is?" Xiao Heng asked back, "So your Royal Highness held a grudge and let people throw my mother down from the high hillside?" The crown prince's eyes trembled, and he suddenly raised his voice, "I didn't." "Enough, stop quarreling," the emperor sternly said. The young Junju plugged her small ears with her fingers. The emperor said to Zhang Dequan, "Take the young Junju out." "Yes." Zhang Dequan came over and took the young Junju out. "What's the situation? We'll know when your mother wakes up." "How is your body?" the emperor asked Xiao Heng. Xiao Heng was about to say that he was fine, but he remembered that Shangguan Qing was sick. He changed his youthful aura and weakly said, "Still the same." The emperor said, "Since you're here, let the state preceptor take a look at you." Xiao Heng didn't speak. The emperor frowned and looked at him. "What's wrong?" Xiao Heng lowered his eyes and whispered, "Anyway, it can't be cured. You don't have to waste medicinal materials on me." The emperor looked at his weak and sick grandson, and then looked at Shangguan Yan, who was seriously injured and unconscious. He deeply frowned. The room once again fell into a strange silence. The crown prince's heart gradually sank. The emperor was old. Although he was still temperamental and tyrannical, there was an inch of his heart that was not so hard. This point could be seen from his attitude toward the young Junju. He was not so tolerant of the young Shangguan Yan. Did he like the young Junju more? No, he was not as cruel as he was when he was young. Shangguan Yan's injury and the emperor's grandson's illness hit the flesh of his heart. The Shenyuan family was destroyed at the right time. If it was now, who could guarantee that the emperor would raise the butcher's knife to the Shenyuan family, even the babies in swaddling clothes? The crown prince cupped his hands and saluted. "Father, let me investigate this matter. I will definitely find out what happened last night and give justice to third sister." This time, the emperor didn't correct him when he said, "third sister." The crown prince secretly clenched his fingertips. "I have my own ideas on this matter." The emperor refused. The crown prince was not surprised by his father's decision. He didn't really want to take the matter into his own hands. He just wanted to show his attitude in front of his father. The emperor looked at Shangguan Yen with a complicated look and said to Xiao Hang, "Take good care of your mother. You didn't touch your bedroom." The last sentence was undoubtedly to welcome the emperor's grandson back to the palace. Xiao Hang said almost without thinking, "No, I want to stay in the state preceptor palace to accompany my mother to recover." The emperor didn't say much, stood up and walked out of the door. The crown prince asked the servant to leave the tonic and turned to follow. When he crossed the threshold, the emperor's footsteps paused slightly, as if he was waiting for something. However, he didn't see it in the end. Xiao Heng did it deliberately. He knew that the emperor was waiting for him to call him imperial grandfather. In fact, it was just an act. He could call him imperial grandfather 100 times, but he didn't want the emperor to get his wish too early. After all, he didn't cherish things that were too easy to get. Xiao Hang carefully recalled his performance just now and made sure that he didn't make any big mistakes. The emperor's affection for Shangguan Qing's grandfather and grandson was an unexpected surprise. One of the reasons for the emperor's preference for Shangguan Qing should be that Shangguan Qing didn't have long to live. The emperor was afraid of all people related to the Shenyuan family, but a grandson who didn't have long to live was not a threat to his imperial power. The crown prince's performance today was very mediocre. He was impulsive and easily angered. But combined with the crown prince's secret actions, he speculated that it was just a disguise. The purpose was to make people think that he couldn't hide things in his heart and couldn't play tricks. Xiao Hang touched the mole under his right eye that was dotted with ink and said lightly, "Then let's see who can pretend better." The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642-826/1069493931 HTML Genius remembered this site's address in a second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile version reading website, zhbqg.com. Chapter 727. Please scan the QR code below to download the app for more exciting content. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are available here. After coming out of the Kylin Hall, the monarch went to find the young princess. The crown prince said goodbye to the monarch and got on the carriage to return home. When the carriage was far away from the imperial preceptor hall, he changed his impulsive and irritable expression and became serious and restrained. The carriage traveled on the spacious street. He said in a deep voice, "Do you know who I saw in the imperial preceptor hall just now?" On the bench beside him sat a man in the official uniform of the commandery. His surname was Xiao and his name was Xue. He was the commandant of Fengche and was in charge of all the carriages and ceremonial guards in the great Yen Palace. The authority between the commandants was not constant. Occasionally, they would infiltrate each other. Xiao Xue was once responsible for investigating the assassination of the crown prince. Everyone thought he was the confidant of the Wang family, but they didn't know that he had been used by the crown prince. He had even accompanied the crown prince to the Chenxiong Academy to watch the boxing competition. "Your Highness, who did you see?" Xiao Xue asked. The crown prince said, "I saw the eldest grandson." "The eldest grandson returned to Chengdu?" Xiao Xue was surprised. The crown prince smiled faintly. "Surprised, right? I didn't receive any news. I suspect that he is not the real Shangguan Qing. He is Xiao Heng. Xiao Shui asked. That Xiao Lulang? The Crown Prince nodded. It's him. As the Crown Prince's confidant, Xiao Shui naturally knew that Xiao Hang had come to Chengdu. He asked, did he reveal his identity, or was he pretending to be Shangguan Qing? Pretending to be Shangguan Qing, the Crown Prince said and frowned. I'm not sure. Xiao Shui looked at the Crown Prince in confusion. Your Highness, what are you not sure about? The Crown Prince sighed. I'm not sure whether that person is Xiao Hang or Shangguan Qing. They look so similar that I can't tell them apart. The Crown Prince and Shangguan Qing had not seen each other for more than 10 years. He only took advantage of the time when Shangguan Qing returned to Shang capital to sneak a peek near the State Preceptor's hall or look at the portrait. He did not know much about the grown-up Shangguan Qing, so he could not distinguish the two from their behavior and voices. The Crown Prince said, even my father couldn't recognize it, let alone me. Xiao Shui said, this is the brilliance of the dethroned Crown Princess. She let Shangguan Qing stay away from Chengdu and not have any contact with anyone, so as to minimize the distinguishing features other than his appearance. Once Shangguan Qing dies of illness, she can take Xiao Hang back to her side, and no one will know that it's someone else. The Crown Prince paused and said, although there are rumors among the people that father dotes on Shangguan Qing because he doesn't have long to live, what if the eldest grandson's illness is cured and father still dotes on him? I can't take that risk. Xiao Shui said, yes, His Majesty is old, and he's not as ruthless as he was when he was young. He killed Empress Xuanyuan's entire family. It's hard to guarantee that he won't make up for it on Empress Xuanyuan's children and grandchildren in his twilight years. The Crown Prince's eyes turned sharp. So, Xiao Hang must die. Once Xiao Hang died, Shangguan Yen would not be able to live. Xiao Shui pondered for a moment and said, in fact, it's not difficult to identify whether the other party is Xiao Hang or not. There are two people who must have dealt with Shangguan Qing. The Crown Prince thought for a moment. You mean the State Preceptor? He may not help me. That guy is stubborn and won't be roped in by any force. Xiao Shui said in his heart. That's because no force can be above the State Preceptor's hall. To put it bluntly, no one is qualified to rope him in. The Crown Prince shook his head. What's more, he and Shangguan Qing only met once in 2 years. They don't know much about each other. As for the slight difference in voice, it can be said that he changed his voice. Xiao Hang is a man. How can his voice be the same when he was a teenager? Xiao Shui pointed out, did your Highness forget that there is another person? The Crown Prince. Who? Xiao Shui, Wang Su. The Crown Prince was slightly stunned. Him. He has been stationed in the Imperial Mausoleum for several years and personally taught Shangguan Qing martial arts. If there is anyone who can identify the real Shangguan Qing, it's him. Xiao Shui said, His Majesty hates it when people deceive him. If the person your Highness saw today is really Xiao Hang, then Xiao Hang has committed the crime of deceiving the Emperor. You're right. The Crown Prince deeply agreed. But there's one thing I can't figure out. Why doesn't Xiao Hang directly recognize the Emperor, but uses Shangguan Qing's identity? Xiao Shui said, because it's much simpler to use Shangguan Qing's identity. If Xiao Hang used his own identity, then it would involve who Shangguan Qing was, what the Crown Princess's intentions were, how much the Emperor had been deceived over the years, and so on. Of course, the Crown Princess could say that she did this because someone wanted to harm Xiao Hang, but the problem was that she couldn't produce any evidence. Would the Emperor believe her without any evidence? With the Emperor's suspicious personality, he would only think that the mother and son were plotting something behind his back. So to be on the safe side, it was safer for Xiao Hang to disguise himself as Shangguan Qing. Not only would there be no complications, but he could also receive all the love from the Emperor. In addition, Xiao Shui faintly felt that perhaps Xiao Hang didn't want to become a member of the Yen royal family. If he used Shangguan Qing's identity, he could leave without any burden after the deed was done. But soon, Xiao Shui denied this guess. He was the eldest grandson of the most powerful Shangzhou Kingdom's emperor. Who wouldn't want such an identity? He shouldn't overestimate Xiao Heng's temperament. He wasn't so indifferent to fame and fortune. Everything was just a matter of weighing the pros and cons. The crown prince was at his wits' end. You're right, but what if he's really Shangguan Qing? Xiao Shui sneered. Then it's even easier. It's much easier to expose Shangguan Qing than Xiao Heng. We didn't expose him before because there was no need. Anyway, Shangguan Qing won't live long, and he didn't cause trouble in Chengdu. As long as he stays in the Imperial Mausoleum, we can pretend that he doesn't exist. The one we want to get rid of is Xiao Heng from the beginning to the end. But if Shangguan Qing is not afraid of death and comes to Chengdu to make trouble, then don't blame us for being rude. The Crown Prince smiled with appreciation. I really can't live without you. Xiao Shui cupped his hands. Your Highness, you flatter me. How could the Crown Prince not understand this? He just said it through his mouth. The Crown Prince seemed to be innocent, but in fact, he was more shrewd than anyone else. The Crown Prince said, There is still a problem. The Wang family is only loyal to my father. I want to ask Wang Su to work for me, but I'm afraid Wang Su won't agree. Xiao Shui smiled. Your Highness, you just need to cater to his liking. This subordinate heard that Wang Su has taken a fancy to an antique. That antique is now in the hands of the Han family's old man. The Crown Prince smiled. It's in the hands of my uncle, then it's much easier. In the State Preceptor Hall's ward, Xiao Heng took out Shangguan Qing's portrait and looked at it carefully. Gu Chengfeng used his qing gong to come to the courtyard, opened the window to the maximum, and jumped in from the windowsill. How's it going? You didn't expose yourself, right? No. Xiao Heng said. Gu Chengfeng came to Xiao Heng and sat down. He looked at the sleeping Shangguan Yan and then looked at the sleeping Gu Jiao. Then, he reached out his hand to Xiao Heng. Xiao Heng looked at him strangely. What? Gu Chengfeng raised his hand. 2 taels of silver. Did I buy the clothes you're wearing for nothing? 1 tael of silver is for the clothes, and 1 tael of silver is for the travel expenses. Why don't you think about how much credit this set of clothes has contributed to your success? People rely on clothes, and Buddha relies on gold. Today, you're here to perform. Without this set of clothes, you can't set up a stage. Do you know how difficult it is to find a set of clothes similar to the one in the portrait? Xiao Heng said, I don't have any money on me. When Jiao Jiao wakes up, I'll ask her to give it to you. Gu Chengfeng choked. Then forget it. Asking that girl to give him money, isn't that the same as asking for her life? It would be good if he didn't empty his wallet. Gu Chengfeng's eyes fell on the portrait. Is the person in this portrait really the imperial grandson? Why do I feel that he looks like you? You guys aren't twins, are you? No. Xiao Heng said. How do you know? Gu Chengfeng asked. His birthday is different. His birthday is 10 days earlier than mine. He asked Yi Qing in the library. Gu Chengfeng said, birthdays can be faked. Isn't Ming Junwang the same age as Shangguan Qing? Let me guess, is it because he's older than Ming Junwang and can be the imperial grandson? Xiao Heng looked confused. Is that so? And Gu Chengfeng said that he believed it. Don't worry about this. When Shangguan Yan wakes up, everything will be revealed. Right now, there are more important things for them to do. Xiao Heng said, there is one person who may know that I'm not Shangguan Qing. Gu Chengfeng's action of pouring tea stopped. Who? Xiao Heng looked at a green leaf on a branch outside the window. His eyes were cold as he said, Military Officer Guan, Wang Su. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg com/89642_896428226/1069448882. HTML Genius remembers this site's address in a second. www.zhhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, m. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 728. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet here. It was no secret that Commandant Guan Wang Su taught Shangguan Qing martial arts in the Imperial Mausoleum. Xiao Hang had heard about it a long time ago, but he didn't expect that one day he would have to pretend to be Shangguan Qing. Wang Su, this hidden danger, must be solved. It didn't mean that he had to kill him, but it was enough to prevent him from coming out and disrupting their plans. Gu Chengfeng curled his lips and patted his chest. Who else could do such an important thing except for him? Remember to give me the money. You take it first. I'll ask you for it later. After Gu Chengfeng emphasized his 2 taels of silver, he went out from where he got them. His martial arts were not good, but his lightness skill was superb. He didn't alarm the men of sacrifice in the Imperial Preceptor Palace. Remember to pick up Jing Kong, Xiao Hang said, looking at his back. Xiao Hang watched Gu Chengfeng's back paused in mid-air, as if he was gritting his teeth and complaining about him. Then he disappeared from the Imperial Preceptor Palace with hidden bitterness. The room became quiet again. Although so many things had happened, not much time had passed. In just half an hour, he completed the change of identity from Xiao Hang to Shangguan Qing. He met the monarch and confronted the crown prince. There was no way out. After today, he would put himself in the whirlpool of power in Chengdu. Everyone would know that he was back. There was more than one force spying on them in the dark. But the whirlpool of power in Chengdu was destined to be bigger and bigger until all the people who had hurt them were swallowed up. The commandant's mansion was located outside the Great Yen Imperial Palace. To enter from the outside, one had to pass through the Gao Gate, Fengtian Gate, and Duan Gate. Gu Chengfeng paced back and forth outside the Gao Gate, secretly wondering whether he should sneak in or wait here. I forgot to ask if Wang Su is in the Imperial Court. If he has already left, then no matter if I sneak in or wait for him outside, there will be no result. No, he should be here. His Majesty had met with Xiao Hang. Based on my understanding of Xiao Hang, even if there wasn't anything fishy about the former crown princess injury, Xiao Hang would still find something fishy about it. Since the monarch trusts Wang Su so much, he will definitely send Wang Su to investigate the case. And the crime scene was in the harem. Gu Chengfeng was deeply amazed by his own wit. How did I become so smart? As expected of me. Wang Su was indeed investigating the case in the harem, but he couldn't find any clues. The scene was very clean, except for the traces of Shangguan Yan's fall. There were only the footprints left by her personal palace maid. In addition, there were several kinds of footprints that belonged to the eunuchs who came to move Shangguan Yan. All of them have been eliminated as suspects. Seems like he's an expert who knows Qing Gong. Wang Su stood on the hillside, looked at the place where Shangguan Yan had fallen and jumped. This was a steep slope, but the walls of the slope were covered with vines. Even if one were to randomly grab 1 or 2 vines, they would still be able to grab 1 or 2. Wang Su carefully examined the scene for half an hour and finally left with a sullen face. He was an outsider. Although he was ordered to enter the harem to investigate the case, he couldn't walk in the harem without permission. Li Sandy from the Zhonghe Palace followed him. Li Sandy didn't say much and just followed him silently. When the two were about to leave the harem, a eunuch in his early 30s suddenly walked toward them. Oh, isn't this Wang Darren and Eunuch Li? What a coincidence. He greeted with a smile. Li Sandy slightly bowed and said very politely, Eunuch Su. This eunuch's surname was Su and his name was Gao. He was the favorite person of Imperial concubine Han. Su Gao smiled and looked at Wang Su, chatting with him. Wang Darren came to investigate the case, right? I don't know if Wang Darren has any clues. Not for the time being, Wang Su said. Su Gao's eyes flashed with a trace of loss. So it's like this. Wang Su said, it may not be man-made, maybe it's just an accident. Su Gao sighed, yes, the harem is an important place. Ordinary assassins don't have the courage or the ability to enter. In any case, I hope Wang Darren can find out the truth as soon as possible. Don't let the former crown princess get hurt in vain. Wang Su said, if there's nothing else, I'll go first. Su Gao smiled and said, Wang Darren, take care. Wang Su went out of the harem. Li Sandy sent him out of the Meridian Gate. Walking on the bluestone path in front of the palace, Wang Su slowly spread out his palm. It was a hooked silk thread. It was found in the thorny bushes on the hillside. There were no footprints in that place. If this silk thread didn't come from Shangguan Yan's clothes, then it must belong to the murderer. Gu Jiao slept for a long time, but Shangguan Yan woke up first. The effect of the anesthetic had largely faded, and her mind was sober. She opened her eyes and looked at the strange roof in a trance. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Awake. Xiao Hang came over and looked at her. Today, Xiao Hang didn't wear a mask, revealing his face. Shangguan Yan stared at him. Her mouth couldn't close. After a long while, she closed her eyes. I'm dreaming. He was the person she could only see in her dreams. Xiao Heng sat down on her bed and looked at her. Does your wound hurt? Hurt. Shangguan Yan was startled. It hurts. She was hurting all over. This wasn't a dream. She opened her eyes and looked at Xiao Heng with shining eyes. Xiao Heng smiled softly. Shangguan Yan suddenly felt embarrassed. She couldn't move, only her eyes rolled around in her eye sockets. Then, her ears turned red at a visible speed. Huh? Xiao Heng was slightly surprised. You weren't like this when you were in Tianxiang Pavilion. You didn't feel ashamed when you watched me and Jiao Jiao doing this and that. I thought you were as good as my father. Shangguan Yan was injured in more than one place. She was wrapped like a rice dumpling. She moved her fingers. Xiao Heng saw it and asked her, what do you want to take? A handkerchief, she said. Xiao Heng asked strangely, what do you want to do with a handkerchief? Shangguan Yan sternly said, to cover my face, I'm shy. Xiao Heng, Jiao Jiao and State Preceptor performed an operation on you. The operation was very successful. Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Xiao Heng asked. No. Shangguan Yan said and looked at Gu Jiao on the small bed. Xiao Heng followed her gaze and looked. She's asleep. Shangguan Yan softened her voice. Then let's talk in a low voice. Xiao Heng smiled. Okay. Shangguan Yan looked at his flash of a smile, and her eyes also flashed with a trace of bright charm. However, suddenly, she realized something and her expression slightly changed. This is the State Preceptor's palace? How can you come to the State Preceptor's palace? Xiao Heng calmly said, I met the Emperor and the Crown Prince. I told them that I am Shangguan Qing. Shangguan Yan opened her mouth wide. Xiao Heng continued, I saw Shangguan Qing's portrait. In a flash, Shangguan Yan's eyes flashed with countless complex emotions. She looked at Xiao Heng in a daze. She wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, she only carefully probed, You know everything? Xiao Heng nodded. Shangguan Yan was stunned. No, what? Xiao Heng said, life experience. Shangguan Yan's eyes flashed with shock again, but she quickly calmed down. How do you know? I guessed it. Xiao Heng said truthfully. His behavior in Tianxiang Pavilion that day was very clear. Coupled with his various encounters, the various news revealed by Yi Qing, and even Zhang Dequan's shout of His Highness Zhang's son that night, he was getting closer and closer to his life experience. When he saw Shangguan Qing's portrait, he finally had an answer to this question. He was Shangguan Yan's child. It's just that he was not completely sure about his relationship with Shangguan Qing. Who is Shangguan Qing? My brother? An twin brother? A negative tone. Xiao Heng opened his mouth. Then he is. Shangguan Yen bit her lips and whispered after a long while, Xiao Qing. Xiao Heng was not surprised by this answer. There was no other reason than Shangguan Qing's birthday was Xiao Qing's birthday. At that time, Xiao Heng and Xiao Qing were poisoned at the same time. There was only one antidote. In order to let Xiao Heng get the antidote, Shangguan Yen hid Shangguan Qing and told Xian Ping Ho that she killed him. The process of making Xian Ping Ho believe it was not easy, so Shangguan Yen didn't want to mention it. Even later, Shangguan Yen almost died when she faked her own death. Shangguan Yen looked at Xiao Heng with a nervous and perturbed look. Do you think I'm too cruel? In order to let her son get the antidote, she deprived Xiao Qing's chance to live. It was difficult to say who was right and who was wrong. He was not her, so he didn't know what kind of struggle she had in her heart. She only wanted her son to live on. All these years, she had been burdened with what she owed Xiao Qing and Xinyang, as well as the longing for her own flesh and blood. Perhaps anyone in the world could accuse her of being heartless, but Xiao Heng, who had survived because of her heartless nature, could not. I won't. Xiao Heng said, How did you think of taking Xiao Qing away? Shangguan Yen whispered, I wanted to take him back to the Imperial Teacher Hall and see if the Imperial Teacher Hall can cure him. You might ask me why I didn't take you away and see if the Imperial Teacher Hall can cure you. In fact, even if I knew the current situation and had to do it all over again, I would still make the same choice as before. The Imperial Teacher Hall was a way out, not the best way. She would rather be condemned by everyone. She would rather bear the infamy of her previous life. She still wanted to be a selfish mother. All of the crimes and suffering would be left to her to bear. Her Aheng just needed to live well. You are not afraid that Princess Xianyang will kill me to avenge her son? Princess Xianyang was not a weak woman. She was also very decisive. Of course, he was not accusing her of being naive. He just wanted to know more about what she had experienced. The good, the bad, the dangerous, the things he had struggled with, and the things he had missed all these years. Shangguan Yen said, Xian Ping Ho will not let her know that her son was killed by me. You really understand my father. He did indeed lie to Princess Xianyang, saying that Xiao Qing died at the hands of assassins. It was only later that Princess Xianyang found out under the instigation of some people. However, she did not succeed in killing me. At the last moment, she carried me out of the fire. Shangguan Yen blamed herself. It was all because I attracted those assassins. Otherwise, you too would not have been poisoned. Xiao Heng hesitated for a moment, but still decided to tell her, those assassins were not attracted by you. They were left behind by the previous emperor. That year, the people who poisoned me and Xiao Qing were the dragon shadow guards that the previous emperor of Zhao country left to my mother. The one they really wanted to poison was Xiao Qing. I was poisoned because they were careless. This tragedy had nothing to do with Shangguan Yen. If there was someone to blame, it could only be blamed on the previous emperor. And in a sense, it was fortunate that Shangguan Yen took Xiao Qing away. Otherwise, they would have continued to poison Xiao Qing. At that time, Long Yi was not there. Xian Ping Ho and Princess Xianyang did not suspect the dragon shadow guards. It was really impossible to guard against. Shangguan Yen had been living in guilt for Xiao Qing all these years. When she heard this news, she found it hard to believe. Are you deliberately making up a story to comfort me? Xiao Heng shook his head. I'm not. I can't make up this story. The previous emperor's brain circuit was similar to that of the great Yen emperor. They were both crazy and ruthless. When Princess Xianyang married Xian Ping Ho, it was to prevent him from rebelling. Once he had the thought of rebelling, Princess Xianyang would immediately let the dragon shadow guards kill him. The previous emperor knew that Princess Xianyang could not get along with men. He was not worried that Princess Xianyang would fall in love with Xian Ping Ho. But after all, the two were husband and wife. In case Xian Ping Ho used force to make Princess Xianyang give birth to his child, Who could guarantee that Princess Xianyang would not be soft-hearted because of the child? Therefore, the previous emperor issued an order to the dragon shadow guards that even Princess Xianyang did not know about. The child of Princess Xianyang and Xian Pingho could not be kept. From Xiao Heng's many years of observation, Princess Xianyang was not soft-hearted toward Xian Pingho. If you asked her to stab Xian Pingho with a knife, she would not even blink. The previous emperor really thought too much. Since ancient times, emperors have always been suspicious, harming others and themselves. Moreover, there was one thing that the previous emperor was wrong about. One of them did use force, but the one who was forced was Xian Pingho. The past was unbearable to recall. As expected, Xiao Hang did not think about the entanglement between Princess Xianyang and Xian Pingho. He spoke out another doubt in his heart, but, since Xiao Qing and I are not twins, why do we look exactly the same? As he spoke, he pointed at the mole under his right eye. Even this mole is the same? Shangguan Yen embarrassedly said, "This is because I gave him a face-changing mask." Xiao Hang and Xiao Qing were half-brothers. In terms of appearance, there was a certain degree of similarity. For example, the two's face and nose were very similar to Xian Pingho. But their eyebrows were not the same. Xiao Qing inherited Princess Xianyang's almond eyes and flat eyebrows, looking gentle and weak. Xiao Hang inherited Shangguan Yan's phoenix eyes and slightly raised eyebrows, with a trace of heroic spirit. When he smiled, it was particularly warm and healing. This was also why everyone who had seen the young Marquis of Zhaodu called him a gentle as jade, a youth who made people feel like they were bathed in the spring breeze. But later, Xiao Hang had an accident and was stranded among the common people. The smile on his face was less, and the gentleness in his eyes disappeared. He was covered with a layer of invisible sharp armor. In the early years, I didn't care too much about the problem of appearance. Until one time, I heard a servant whisper that this child didn't look like me at all. When he was young, it was hard to tell, but the older he grew, the more he didn't look like me. I was anxious. The state preceptor hall was willing to treat Xiao Qing because he was the eldest grandson of the emperor. If people found out that he wasn't, he wouldn't be able to continue receiving treatment. So, I sent someone to Zhao country and got your portrait. Then, I drew the parts that didn't look like you. Speaking of this, Shangguan Yen paused. It was at that time that your identity was exposed, letting the crown prince know of your existence. Xiao Heng suddenly understood. So that's how it is. Then everything made sense. Xiao Heng touched the mole on his face. Shangguan Qing had drawn it according to him. Now that his mole was gone, was he imitating Shangguan Qing or imitating himself? He really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What's wrong? Shangguan Yen looked at him and asked. Xiao Heng said, "My mole is actually gone." At that time, Princess Xianyang, in order to not let those people easily find him, burned the mole on his face after a big fire. He changed his appearance, and his voice and figure were different from before. In addition, he lost the mole. Even his own father, Marquis Xianping, spent a lot of effort to confirm that it was him. Shangguan Yen gently said, "She is really good to you." Her tone was gratified, but also sad and lonely. In the end, she still missed it. In his 19 years of life, there was never a mark of her. Can I call you A Heng? The crown princess was born to be respected. Even if she was executed in public in the throne room, she never lowered her noble head and never begged. But at this time, just asking if she could call him that, she used up all the humility in her bones. Xiao Heng said, "You can call me whatever you want." "Then can you please call me?" Shangguan Yen didn't say this. She lowered her eyes and endured the sadness and bitterness in her heart. Can't cry. The descendants of the Xian Yuan family shed blood but not tears. She didn't cry when she gave birth to a child. She didn't cry when her bones were broken. She didn't cry. In fact, Xiao Heng still had a lot of things he wanted to ask her. For example, what happened last night, what happened more than 10 years ago, why did she become a slave? Xiao Heng looked at her weak body and said, "You rest for a while. I will go and get something to eat." Okay. Her voice was choked with sobs. She tried hard to suppress it. Xiao Hang stood up and stopped in his tracks. Shangguan Yan's heart suddenly jumped. Is he going to call me? Is it? Xiao Hang said, I forgot to ask you what you want to eat. You just had an operation. Millet porridge and barley porridge are both good. Oh. Shangguan Yan was disappointed and said in a low voice, both are fine. Xiao Hang, then millet porridge? Shangguan Yan, okay. She had no appetite. She was a bad woman. She didn't deserve to be his mother. Xiao Heng stepped to the door. When he was about to cross the threshold, he stopped again. It may be a bit late to say this, but, he turned around and looked at her sincerely, thank you for giving birth to me. Thank you for bringing me into this world, and thank you for everything you have done for me. Mother. The word mother, that he had waited for 19 years, softened the years and comforted the more than 7,000 days and nights of separation. Shangguan Yan choked and couldn't speak. Thank you, my son. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more wonderful content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/1069300020. HTML Genius remembered this site's address in a second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile version reading website, zhbqg.com. Chapter 729. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more fully. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. Gu Chengfeng waited outside the palace for a long time until his temper flared up. Wang Su, can you do it? I still have to pick up the child later. You're delaying me from my work. I'll count to 3. If you still don't come out, I'll go into the palace to find you. Wang Su came out. Wang Su had just brought people to search Qianxiang Pavilion yesterday. Gu Chengfeng had seen him before. The symbol of Commandant Guan on him was obvious. It was hard not to recognize him. After Wang Su left Gao Men, he sat on the carriage to return to his residence. Gu Chengfeng followed quietly. Wang Su was not in a hurry. The carriage did not go too fast. As they left the palace, there were more shops and pedestrians on the street. This caused Wang Su's carriage to slow down. Gu Chengfeng followed at a distance. When Wang Su's carriage passed by a restaurant, it was stopped by another carriage. A middle-aged man dressed as a steward came down from the carriage. He smiled and cupped his hands towards Wang Su's carriage. It was unknown what he said to Wang Su, but Wang Su got down from the carriage and entered the restaurant beside him. Gu Chengfeng did not go in directly. Instead, he went to the ready-made clothing store diagonally across the street to buy a set of female clothing. He could not bear to buy jewelry, so he only used a hairband. Wearing a veil, he looked like an ordinary girl. He entered the restaurant and said he was looking for someone. The waiter saw that she was dressed plainly and did not look like a rich family's daughter. He was too lazy to greet her and told her to look for someone herself. Gu Chengfeng quickly found the middle-aged man in a room at the east end of the corridor on the second floor. He was guarding the door. There were 2 men of sacrifice with him. Was there such a big lineup? What was going on? With the men of sacrifice guarding, it was impossible for Gu Chengfeng to eavesdrop in the corridor. He entered an empty room, pushed open the window, and jumped out onto the roof. He used Qinggong to come to the room where Wang Su was. He bent down, picked up a tile, opened it slightly, and looked down through the gap. An old man. He was dressed very luxuriously. He sat on an armchair, his hands resting on the handle of a rosewood cane. Gu Chengfeng happened to be on top of his head, so he couldn't see his face clearly. Wang Su, on the other hand, was sitting opposite him. Due to the angle, Gu Chengfeng could see a small part of Wang Su's face. "What is old Master Han doing?" Wang Su said. "Old Master Han? Han Ye's grandfather, the head of the Han family?" Gu Chengfeng pricked up his ears. Old Master Han winked at the manservant beside him. The manservant walked towards Wang Su with a brocade box in his hands. Wang Su glanced at the brocade box and asked seriously, "What's the meaning of this?" Old Master Han raised his hand and the servant opened the brocade box. Gu Chengfeng wanted to see what was inside the brocade box, but he was blocked by the servant's brain spoon. Gu Chengfeng gritted his teeth. However, he saw Wang Su's body tense up. He couldn't tell if he was excited or surprised. Could it be that this old thing wanted to bribe Wang Su? The Han family was imperial concubine Han's mother's family and belonged to the crown prince's party. Speaking of this, Gu Chengfeng couldn't help but sigh at the complexity of the Yen royal family. In Zhao country, the princes were not allowed to form cliques for personal gain, but the Yen monarch didn't seem to care. The Yen monarch didn't seem to be angry when the top 10 aristocratic families openly supported their own princes. The only aristocratic family that the monarch had suppressed was the Shenyuan family. The whole family was destroyed. Old Master Han smiled and said, "I know you've been coveting my treasure for a long time. Today, I'll give it to you." Wang Su withdrew his gaze from the box and said seriously, "I don't deserve it. Old Master Han, you've frightened me." Old Master Han laughed and said, "Don't be so nervous. It's just an antique. I can afford it. If you like it, I have many more in my house." Wang Su asked, "Old Master Han, what can I do for you?" Old Master Han said, "You're a smart man. I'll be frank. There's something I don't understand and I want to ask Commandant Wang to explain it to me." Wang Su said, "As long as it's not related to the imperial court, I'll tell you everything I know." The Wang family and the Han family were the top aristocratic families in Chengdu. In terms of background, the Wang family was more profound than the Han family. However, consort Wang Xian didn't give birth to a son and only had 2 princesses. Therefore, in the eyes of the people, the Han family with the crown prince was better. But in fact, according to Gu Chengfeng's investigation, the Wang family was more valued by the monarch. Old Master Han said faintly, "I heard that the crown prince is back." Wang Su frowned and said, "Oh? I haven't heard about it. You're well informed." Old Master Han smiled and said, "You don't have to make insinuations. After all, I'm the crown prince's uncle." The crown prince just went to the state preceptor palace to visit the deposed crown princess. His Majesty was there, and so was the crown prince. The implication was that he didn't pay much attention to the deposed crown princess, but it was such a coincidence that the crown prince met the crown prince. The crown prince was old Master Han's nephew. How could he not tell old Master Han such an important thing? Wang Su took a deep look at old Master Han and asked, "Then what does this have to do with you coming to see me now?" Old Master Han said, "To tell you the truth, I suspect that this crown prince is a fake." Wang Su's expression changed and he asked, "Why do you say that?" Old Master Han said meaningfully, "My family's people were transporting ores to Qi City. Yesterday, they sent a pigeon back saying that they met the crown prince. Qi City is at least 7 to 8 days away from here. I don't think the crown prince can grow a pair of wings and fly back." Wang Su frowned and asked, "Your family's people know the crown prince?" Old Master Han seemed to have expected him to ask this question. He smiled and said, "You don't think that with our Han family's ability, we can't get a portrait of the crown prince, do you?" There was a portrait, but the matter of the crown prince meeting the crown prince was a fabrication. But if he didn't say that, how could he arouse Wang Su's suspicion? No matter whether Wang Su believed him or not, he would still go to the state preceptor palace to check. Gu Chengfeng clenched his fists. This old thing was very cunning. Wang Su looked at old Master Han with a serious expression and asked, "So, old Master Han, you want me to expose the Crown Prince? Old Master Han nodded without hesitation and said, exposing him is beneficial to our Han family. That's right, that's my purpose. I want to clear all obstacles for the Crown Prince. We're all smart people, so why pretend to be innocent and hypocritical? Wang Su said seriously, if he's a fake, then it's my duty to expose him. Old Master Han, you should take back your things. Wang Su didn't do this for the Han family, but for the Emperor. Old Master Han sent him again and again, but Wang Su refused. In the end, Old Master Han sighed helplessly and Wang Su took his leave. Gu Chengfeng slowly put the tile back and planned to leave as well. At this moment, he heard a conversation in the room. Master, why didn't he take it? He didn't refuse us, did he? It was the middle-aged steward. He had been waiting in the corridor outside the door and didn't hear the conversation inside. Old Master Han smiled and stroked the antique in the brocade box. The Crown Prince is still too young. It's a bad idea to cater to his interests and ask for help. It's better to attack his weakness and turn him into the master. How can I let go of this treasure? Gu Chengfeng thought, good lord, he's trying to get something without risking anything. The middle-aged steward said worriedly, will he tell the Emperor about our attempt to bribe him? Old Master Han said sarcastically, if he sincerely accepts it, he probably won't tell the Emperor. The Crown Prince took this into consideration and decided to bribe him. But I think it's okay if he tells the Emperor. The deposed Crown Princess and the Crown Prince are a huge threat to the Crown Prince. If we don't do anything, it'll be suspicious. Sometimes, if we reveal a little flaw, the Emperor will think that we're all under his control. We're not a big threat. The middle-aged steward said excitedly, Master, you're wise. Gu Chengfeng's mouth twitched. The Crown Prince must have inherited his craftiness from the Han family. Does the Han family all use this kind of tactic? It's really from the same origin. Gu Chengfeng didn't like this guy and really wanted to beat him up. But with his current strength, it would be a little difficult to deal with the two men of sacrifice outside the door. He would never admit that he had no power to fight back. I'll call that girl over some other day and put you in a sack. Gu Chengfeng chased after Wang Su. Wang Su originally wanted to go home, but after talking with Old Master Han, he decided to go to the Grand Preceptor Hall. Wang Su had stayed in the Imperial Mausoleum for a few years and taught the Crown Prince martial arts, although the Crown Prince didn't learn a single move. But after all, they had been together for a long time and there were things that only the two of them knew. He would know if the other party was really the Crown Prince after a test. After the carriage had traveled for a while, he frowned and said to the coachman, Stop. Yes. The coachman stopped the carriage by the side of the road. Wang Su got out of the carriage and went to a pastry shop to buy the Crown Prince's favorite peach pastry. Excuse me, do you have a washroom? He asked the shop owner. Yes, in the backyard, the shop owner said. Then, I'll put my peach pastry here first. Okay. Gu Chengfeng waited outside the shop for a long time, but Wang Su didn't come out. What's going on? Did he fall into the latrine? Gu Chengfeng decided to look for him. He searched the backyard inside and out, but there was no trace of Wang Su at all. Gu Chengfeng slapped his head. Oh no, he found out and ran away. Wait, I can't be anxious. Where would he go? I know. He must have gone to the Grand Preceptor Hall. He went to find the Crown Prince. Gu Chengfeng had been in contact with Xiao Heng day and night. He always listened to Xiao Heng's analysis of the aristocratic families and the current situation in Chengdu. Under the influence of what he saw and heard, his logical reasoning had improved. After that, his temper became a little more stable. He took a deep breath. I'm not anxious. Damn you, don't be anxious. He'll be finished if he sees Xiao Heng. Gu Chengfeng ran away immediately. Xiao Heng, hang in there. You must avoid Wang Su. If you can't avoid him, you can play dead. Wang Su was wearing the official uniform of Commandant Guan. If Xiao Heng saw him, he would be able to recognize him. However, Wang Su was not stupid. After he entered the Grand Preceptor Hall on the pretext of seeking an audience with the monarch, he dirted his clothes when no one was looking and borrowed a set of clothes from the Grand Preceptor Hall's disciples. In an empty corner, Wang Su tied his hair into a high bun on the top of his head. At a glance, he was an elder disciple of the Grand Preceptor Hall. Is His Majesty and the Crown Prince in the Qilin Hall? He stopped a disciple passing by. His aura was so strong that the disciple thought he was an unknown senior brother. The disciple said respectfully, "His Majesty and the young princess have gone to find the Grand Preceptor. The Crown Prince is in the Qilin Hall." "Thank you." Wang Su thanked him and walked toward the Qilin Hall. It was already evening. The summer days were long and the sun was abundant. The sky was still bright. He came to the corridor of the Qilin Hall. The corridor was empty and looked like there was no one, but there were a few gazes in the dark. Wang Su understood that these gazes were from the death warriors of the Grand Preceptor Hall. He was not here to kill people. There was no murderous aura on him, so the death warriors would not attack him. He looked through the rooms one by one and finally saw a side room with the door half open at the end. He came to the door of the side room and could faintly see a young man sitting at a square table with his back facing the door. There were flour, bowls, meat stuffing, and other things on the table. The man seemed to be rolling the dough. His movements were slightly clumsy. It was obvious that it was his first time doing this. On the bed beside him lay the injured crown princess. On the other small bed, there was someone sleeping. Wang Su thought that this young man must be the crown prince that old Master Han had mentioned. There was a secret signal between him and the crown prince. He only needed one sentence to test whether the crown prince was real or fake. His actions had to be fast and his voice had to be loud. Only then could he catch the other party off guard. As the thought flashed through his mind, Wang Su suddenly pushed open the door and jumped into the room. He shouted with full energy, "Heavenly King covers Earth Tiger." Bang! The young man picked up the rolling pin in his hand and knocked him out. After the rolling pin with internal energy hit Wang Su, it flew back into the man's hand. Gu Chongqing did not turn his head. With a face full of flour, he continued to seriously and clumsily roll the dough. "Younger sister wants to sleep. Don't be noisy." Digression. Cooking for younger sister. Got. The latest chapter of this book is not finished. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that cannot be found on the internet are all here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642-826/1069251883. HTML Genius remembered this site's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Biku Gur mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 730. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet are all available here. After Gu Changfeng realized that he had lost Wang Su, he rushed to the Grand Tutor Hall with all his might. He used his qinggong to the extreme. The wind blew and he almost couldn't open his eyes. However, he still couldn't catch up with Wang Su. There was no other reason. This was the inner city of Chengdu, Wang Su's territory. Gu Changfeng usually stayed in the remote Tianxiong Pavilion in the outer city. Even if he entered the city, he only came to see Xiao Hang and little Jing Kong. He wasn't familiar with the inner city and couldn't beat Wang Su, who took a shortcut. In addition, in order to hide from others and eavesdrop on Wang Su, Gu Changfeng changed into a woman's skirt. This dragged him down. He grabbed the hem of his dress with both hands, spread his feet apart, and ran forward with his legs splayed out in front of him. The pedestrians on the road all looked at him like he was an idiot. Their jaws almost dropped. Gu Chengfeng finally arrived at the Grand Tutor Hall. He couldn't enter the hall openly, so he could only climb over the wall. But after running all the way, he was already panting like a dog. I'll pant, twice. Damn. What's going on? I'm so tired. Gu Chengfeng was almost done panting. He went to the side wall of the Grand Tutor Hall and jumped up. He was still in the same place. He jumped up again. He was still in the same place. He was really exhausted. Gu Chengfeng had to use the most primitive method, climbing the wall. He climbed to the top of the wall and fell down from the high wall. This was really the most embarrassing mission he had ever been on. When Gu Chengfeng arrived at the courtyard outside the sick room of the Qilin Hall with his messy hair and loose clothes without a care for his image, it was as if he had just been ruthlessly defiled by someone. He didn't know anything about this. He came to the window and was about to lift his skirt and flip over when he saw Gu Chongqing in the room. Gu Chongqing was sitting at a square table with half of his face facing the window. His handsome face was covered with flour. There was dough, flour, and other ingredients on the table. He was using a rolling pin to roll dough. Gu Chengfeng took a few glances before he recognized that this was his elder brother. He was stunned. What was going on? Why would his elder brother appear here? Although he knew that his elder brother had come to the Yan Kingdom, he did not come to Shangdu. Furthermore, why would his elder brother be sitting here quietly rolling noodles? And it was so ugly. The thickness of the noodles was uneven, and the length was different. It wasn't noodles, but dough lumps, right? Compared to Big Brother's appearance, Big Brother's rolling of noodles surprised Gu Chengfeng even more. This was something that Big Brother would never do in 10 lifetimes. It was even more impossible than him reincarnating as a woman. The corner of Gu Chengfeng's mouth twitched. For a moment, he wondered if he was dreaming. He pinched his thigh hard, and the pain almost made him fall to the ground. Yes, it was not a dream. This was really Big Brother. Big Brother came to find him, and Big Brother was rolling noodles for him. Gu Chengfeng was moved to tears. He looked affectionately at Big Brother, who was clumsily rolling noodles, and said excitedly, "Big, bang." The rolling pin flew over. Gu Chengfeng was hit in the face and fell to the ground with his arms and legs spread out. The rolling pin had already flown back. "I told you not to quarrel." Gu Chongqing caught the rolling pin that flew back and continued to roll noodles. Gu Chengfeng looked at the blue sky and white clouds, and said in a voice that only he could hear, "Big Brother, I am your younger brother, Xiao Hong, Feng, ah." Xiao Hang had just been called by the monarch. He knew that Gu Chongqing had come. It was because Gu Chongqing was here that he felt relieved to go out. When he returned to the ward, he first found a disciple of the State Preceptor Hall who had fainted at the door. When he closed the window, he found an unconscious civilian girl in the courtyard. It seems to be Gu Chengfeng. Xiao Hang recognized him. Gu Chongqing paused in his action of rolling the dough. Xiao Hang was puzzled. Why did he faint? Gu Chongqing, whose body suddenly stiffened, was speechless. Gu Chengfeng was pulled into the house by Gu Chongqing. Gu Chongqing pinched his philtrum. His younger sister was asleep. No one was allowed to disturb her. His younger brother was cruelly woken up. Gu Chengfeng slowly woke up on the chair. At this time, he did not know that there was a stick mark all over his face. The left and right sides of his face were clearly separated. He saw Big Brother, who was standing in front of him like a mountain, and suddenly felt a lump in his throat. He felt so wronged. Big Brother hit him as soon as they met. Gu Chongqing looked at him condescendingly and said indifferently, "Have you been neglecting your martial arts practice these days? Why can't you take one hit?" Gu Chengfeng was stunned. He raised his head and looked at Big Brother's serious face. It was not that Big Brother did not recognize him, nor did he hit him. He was testing his martial arts. Big Brother had always remembered his martial arts. He misunderstood Big Brother. "Big Brother," Gu Chongqing said sternly, "from now on, wake up an hour earlier every day to practice martial arts." "Yes, Big Brother." Gu Chongqing turned around and heaved a sigh of relief. Gu Jiao woke up at dusk. She had a good sleep. She felt alive. She sat up and stretched. Then, she realized 3 things. First, Gu Chongqing was here. Second, there was a strong fragrance of noodles in the house. Third, Gu Jiao looked strangely at Gu Changfeng, who was sitting beside Gu Chongqing. How did you become a pig's head? Gu Changfeng pointed. That's a pig's head. I'm not. Gu Jiao looked in the direction of Gu Changfeng's finger. She saw an unconscious man who was tied up and sitting on the ground by the wall. From the extent of his bruises, this person was indeed better. This was because Wang Su shouted louder, so Gu Chongqing hit him harder. Who is he? Gu Jiao asked. Wang Su. Xiaoheng said. Eat the noodles first. I'll tell you slowly. Gu Chongqing said to Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao nodded. She got up and sat down beside Gu Chongqing. Using noodles to let his sister sit beside him was very scheming. Gu Jiao looked at Gu Chongqing beside her, and then looked at Xiaoheng and Gu Changfeng. You're all here. Where's Jing Kong? At this time, school should be over in Jing Kong. Xiaoheng said. They brought her to the garden to play with the little princess. The original plan was for Gu Changfeng to pick her up and send her to Willow Lane to stay for a few days. With Master Nan and Master Lu looking after her, nothing should happen. Who would have thought that Gu Changfeng would be beaten into a pig's head with a stick? Xiaoheng had no choice but to change his plan and bring the young commandery princess to fetch her playmate. Eat it while it's hot. Gu Chongqing said, otherwise, the noodles will be lumpy. Gu Jiao looked at the steaming hot noodles in the bowl. She didn't ask whether it was noodles or noodles. She just sighed and said, I just woke up and there's food. It's good. Gu Changfeng and Xiaoheng burped together. Yes, you're really good. We and the other disciples of the State Preceptor Palace in the kitchen are all stuffed. In order to improve his cooking skills, Gu Chongqing rolled wave after wave and cooked bowl after bowl. This bowl was just out of the pot. Fortunately, Gu Chongqing's cooking skills were better than Xiao Liulong's. Except for the ugly appearance, the taste was not bad. Gu Jiao didn't eat at noon. After the operation, she fell asleep. She was really hungry now. Gu Jiao said, the noodles are quite chewy. Gu Chongqing. I made Yongchun noodles. Noodles. Gu Chongqing had heard Gu Jiao mumble about Yongchun noodles in her sleep when he was guarding her. The chefs in the State Preceptor's Hall could not make authentic Zhao country Yongchun noodles, so he decided to cook for his sister personally. While Gu Jiao ate the noodles, Gu Jiao told Gu Changfeng about Old Master Han meeting Wang Su. Anyway, Wang Su is the only one who can recognize the eldest grandson of the emperor, except for the former crown princess. Gu Jiao slurped the noodles. Oh, I see. As soon as her voice fell, Wang Su woke up. When he opened his eyes, he found that he was tied up. He looked at the people in the room with a dumbfounded face. He didn't understand what happened. Just now, there was only the eldest grandson of the emperor, but now, why are there people? His eyes looked back and forth between Xiaoheng and Gu Chongqing. Finally, he realized that the man rolling the noodles was not the eldest grandson of the emperor, but the person in front of him. When did the eldest grandson of the emperor have such a broad back? Who are you? He asked warily. Gu Jiao came over with the noodles, squatted down in front of him, and said while slurping, Are you that unlucky guy? Wang Su. Xiaoheng looked at Gu Jiao's back as she squatted on the ground and sucked on the bowl. Why did he feel that this posture was a little familiar? He looked at the sleeping Shangguan Yen and the corner of his mouth twitched. Can't I learn something good? I'm asking you a question. Gu Jiao said. Rumble, Wang Su's stomach growled. Wang Su turned his face away and tried not to smell the aroma of the noodles. But will it be okay if he doesn't smell it? The sound of Gu Jiao slurping the noodles was simply enough to make people drool. Gu Jiao first put a hat on him. You disguised yourself as a disciple of the state preceptor palace. Did you want to assassinate the eldest grandson of the emperor? Wang Su turned his face and sternly refuted, "You're talking nonsense. How can I assassinate His Highness?" Gu Jiao said, "Oh," and casually asked, "Then what are you doing here?" Wang Su looked at the noodles in her bowl, swallowed his saliva, and said, I got the news that someone pretended to be His Highness, so I came to identify the real one." Gu Jiao asked, "Did you identify it?" Wang Su awkwardly said, "No, I haven't finished the code yet, but I was knocked unconscious by your people." Gu Jiao curiously asked, "What code? Tell me about it." The three men in the room all looked at Wang Su, including Xiao Hang, who didn't change his expression. Wang Su was stationed at the Imperial Mausoleum when Shangguan Qing was 13 years old. He didn't have any contact with Shangguan Qing in the first half of the year. It was by chance that he was injured and returned to the camp. He met Shangguan Qing on the way, and Shangguan Qing asked someone to send him a bottle of wound medicine at night. At that time, he thought that this child was good and wanted to teach him martial arts. But this child was unwilling to study hard, and often led him astray. For example, in the past 2 years, he didn't teach Shangguan Qing any moves, but Shangguan Qing taught him a lot of strange codes. Wang Su took a deep look at Xiao Hang and said seriously, "The Heavenly King covers the Earth Tiger." Gu Jiao said without hesitation, "You're an idiot." Wang Su was stunned and looked at Gu Jiao in disbelief. Gu Jiao slurped a mouthful of noodles, finished it, and said, "Did I get it right?" Wang Su was surprised. This was impossible. This was clearly a secret signal between him and the eldest grandson of the emperor. Gu Jiao, I bet a pack of spicy sticks that the state preceptor knows all about it. Gu Jiao pointed at Xiao Hang. He taught me. After the code is correct, he is the imperial grandson. Wang Su frowned. Why don't I believe it? Each of you is more suspicious than the other. The thought flashed through his mind. Wang Su frowned and said, I still have the code. I don't believe that you can all answer it. Gu Jiao slurped a mouthful of noodles. Go ahead. Wang Su, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. Gu Jiao, east, west, north, south, center, and white. Wang Su was shocked. Every cause has its effect. Your retribution is mine. Wang Su's body trembled. He gritted his teeth again and made a ruthless plan. Medicine, medicine. Gu Jiao slurped a mouthful of noodles. Check, check. Wang Su was shocked for the third time. Gu Chengfeng patted Xiao Hang next to him and whispered, What are they talking about? Do you understand? Xiao Hang thought to himself, It would be strange if I understood. What kind of nonsense is this? Did Xiao Qing really teach them? Why does it sound like they aren't serious? Having an indecent father is already enough. Don't tell me he also has an indecent older brother? Wang Su threw out a few more secret signals one after another, and Gu Jiao matched them all without any mistakes. Wang Su took a deep breath, looked at Gu Jiao, and then looked at Xiao Hang not far away. He clenched his fists and said, Now that things have come to this, I can only use my trump card. If you can even answer this, then I will believe that he is the real imperial grandson. And Gu Jiao calmly drank a mouthful of noodles and motioned for him to continue. Wang Su narrowed his eyes, raised his chin, and said with a strong aura, This time it's not a code, it's a title. It's tailor-made for me by His Highness Prince Chongsun. His Highness Prince Chongsun said that this is the dream of all men in the world, to become the person. Gu Jiao tilted her head. Old Wang from next door. Wang Su. How the hell do you even know this? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg com/89642-82642-826/1069084886. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website, m. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 731. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all here. Wang Su completely collapsed. He lay on the cool floor in a daze, staring straight at the roof beams as if he had been struck by lightning 100,000 times. Gu Jiao stood up with the bowl of noodles and pouted at Gu Chengfeng. She said lightly, "Untie him, he's one of us." Gu Chengfeng was dumbfounded. "That's it? No, there are so many people here, and you're ordering me around? Humph. You know I'm the most reliable." Gu Chengfeng strode over with a big rolling pin mark on his head and untied the rope on Wang Su's body. How could Wang Su not recognize this was the common woman who had followed him on the street? With an Adam's apple. It was a man. Wang Su's heart was full of doubts. Who were the people who appeared beside the imperial grandson in this room? One was a terrifying master who could knock him down with a rolling pin, one was a master of Qinggong who was good at disguise and forced him to escape, and the other was Xiao Lulang, whom he knew. He was the doctor that the monarch had invited for the deposed crown princess. He was the one who had brought Xiao Lulang in through the palace gate. "No, why were you following me just now?" Wang Su asked Gu Chengfeng. Since the girl said she was one of them, Gu Chengfeng didn't plan on disguising himself as a woman anymore. His eyes flashed, and he said in his own male voice, "I wasn't following you, I was following the crown prince. The crown prince met with the old man of the Han family again, so I followed him to see what tricks he was up to." "Who knew you would come? You secretly met with the old man of the Han family. Isn't that suspicious?" Sure enough, he was a man, Wang Su thought. Wang Su carefully considered the possibility of the situation Gu Chengfeng described. The conflict between the crown prince and the deposed crown princess wasn't new. The cause could be traced back to when the crown princess was deposed and the crown prince became the heir apparent. Anyone would think that the crown prince stole what belonged to the crown princess. A few days ago, the crown prince and the deposed crown princess had an argument in the harem, and the crown prince's guards even injured the deposed crown princess. Now that the deposed crown princess was being persecuted again, it was reasonable that the imperial grandson would be the first to suspect the crown prince and send people to keep an eye on him. After Gu Chengfeng untied him, he stood up and extended a hand to him. Wang Su grabbed Gu Chengfeng's hand and stood up. Hiss. So painful. Who's that big guy? He was too heavy-handed. He limped over to Xiao Hang and cupped his hands in salute. "Your humble servant Wang Su greets your Highness Zhongsun." Through Gu Chengfeng's observation of Wang Su, although this person was a little unreasonable, he was not bought by Grandfather Han. It could be seen that he was a loyal person. Xiao Heng nodded and said, "What happened today was a misunderstanding. Commandant Guan, please don't take it to heart. It was this humble subject who was impetuous. Your Highness Zhongsun is willing to overlook this humble subject's mistake. This humble subject is extremely grateful. His Majesty is in the stargazing tower. Go and report to him." "Yes." Wang Su cupped his hands in salute again and then retreated. The moment he turned around, he suddenly turned his head to look at Xiao Heng. "Your Highness Zhongsun won't ask this humble subject whether or not this humble subject has found any clues. Even Imperial concubine Han had sent people to inquire about it in front of him." Xiao Heng looked at him with a heavy gaze. "I believe that Commandant Guan will give my mother justice." His Highness Zhongsun still trusted him as always. A wave of heat rolled through Wang Su's heart. An impulse to be trusted struck him in the heart. He solemnly said, "This humble subject will do his best." He left the room. Gu Chengfeng stuck his head out to take a look. He entered the room and clapped his hands. Okay, he's gone far. Xiao Heng took out a clean piece of gauze from his bosom. After opening it, a small thread was revealed. This was something that had been found on Wang Su's body. Wang Su had wrapped it in a handkerchief. It was incompatible with Wang Su's identity as Commandant Guan. It also faintly exuded the fragrance of grass and the smell of blood. Xiao Heng speculated that it was the evidence that Wang Su had found at the crime scene today. Xiao Heng cut a small piece of it with a pair of scissors. The clothes that Shangguan Yen wore when she was injured had been taken off by Gu Jiao and placed in a box in the ward as evidence. After careful examination, Xiao Heng found that this piece of silk did not come from Shangguan Yen. The four people sat around the square table. Gu Jiao had finished her noodles and was holding a bowl that was bigger than her face to drink the noodle soup. Xiao Heng sat beside her and said, "It should be the murderer's clothes that were left in the grass or thorns at the scene." Gu Chengfeng and Gu Chongqing sat opposite the two people. "Is it that Han Ye's cloth?" Gu Chengfeng asked. Han Ye was very suspicious. Not only did he assassinate Xiao Heng, but he also tried to assassinate Gu Jiao. He seemed to be the best knife in the crown prince's hand. Xiao Heng shook his head. "This is coarse silk. It's a fur coat in winter and coarse clothes in summer. Coarse silk doesn't have a strong insulation, but it has excellent ventilation, so it is generally used to make summer clothes." He said and looked at Gu Chengfeng, "Your coat is made of coarse silk. The quality is not as good as the coarse silk in my hand, but this kind of coarse silk is not the best. Today in the forest, when Jiao Jiao fought with Han Yi, he wore silk. That night, when he disguised himself as a black-clothed man to assassinate me at the academy, he wore the best coarse silk. In fact, it was not difficult to understand. Han Yi was the heir of the Han family. He was a real aristocrat. Naturally, it was impossible for him to wear 7 or 8 sets of cheap night clothes on the market. They were all custom-made. They were close-fitting, light, and had good stretch. Gu Chengfeng looked at the coarse silk in Xiao Heng's hand and said thoughtfully, "That is to say, this material is neither the cheapest nor the most expensive." Xiao Heng said, "It's above average. The common people can't afford it, and the aristocrats don't like it." Gu Chengfeng frowned. Who could it be? A master of the Han family? A master of the crown prince's mansion? Could it be that Qi Xian? They had already exchanged all the information they knew. Xiao Heng's background, the fact that Shangguan Yen was the female slave of the Yen kingdom, and the clues about Qi Xian and other people related to Han Yi. Gu Chengfeng asked Gu Chongqing, "Big brother, you fought with Qi Xian. Did you see what clothes he was wearing?" Gu Chongqing said, "I didn't fight with him." Qi Xian grabbed Han Yi and left. He didn't fight with Gu Chongqing. Gu Jiao raised a hand from behind the big bowl. "I fought with Qi Xian." Gu Chengfeng looked at her. "Did he wear clothes made of this material?" Gu Jiao, "I don't remember." Gu Chengfeng, Xiao Heng said, "Keep an eye on Wang Su. See if he has any clues." Gu Chengfeng's mouth twitched. Haha, what happened to the trust? Isn't he still secretly watching? Got it. I'll keep an eye on him later. Gu Chengfeng curled his lips. Thinking of something, he asked, "I still don't understand. They killed you because you are the eldest grandson of the emperor. You haven't been demoted to a commoner. But your mother is no longer a member of the imperial family. Why are there still people who don't let her go?" Xiao Heng said, "If they can be demoted, they can be reinstated. The emperor once said that the crown princess, Shangguan Yen, was demoted to a commoner and imprisoned in the imperial mausoleum, never to return to the capital. But now, not only had she returned, she had even moved into the imperial palace. Who among those who were itching to make a move could sit still? The crown prince is the first one who can't sit still. 1 or 2 days may be nothing, but after a long time, some people will worry about whether the emperor's father-daughter relationship with Shangguan Yen has returned. This is a very dangerous signal. Not everything must be solved after it happens. It is better to nip the problem in the bud and nip the problem in the bud. Even if it is just a speculation, it must be stifled immediately. Gu Chengfeng thought for a moment and said to Xiao Hang, "You don't have to go through so much trouble. Maybe your mother saw the murderer. We can't rule out this possibility." Xiao Hang said, "If she really saw it, we will know if another person came out to take the blame. The person who tried to assassinate him that night was obviously Han Yi, but the one who was punished was the second master of the Han family." Gu Jiao drank the last mouthful of noodle soup. She had just put down the big empty bowl when two slender hands reached out to her at the same time. One was Gu Chongqing's, and the other was Xiao Heng's. Both of them were holding a clean handkerchief in their hands. Gu Jiao blinked her eyes. Why does she feel like this is another question that will send her to her death? She slightly raised her left hand. Gu Chongqing's face sank. She slightly raised her right hand. Xiao Heng's face turned black. Her eyes moved. She stretched out her hands and grabbed the handkerchief of the two men at the same time. No distinction between first and second. Fair treatment. While wiping her mouth with two handkerchiefs, she ran out of the room. When she was gone, her voice came from the corridor, "I'm going to find the state preceptor." The two men stared at each other for 3 seconds. Suddenly, they got up and shouted at the door, "Your foot!" This girl sprained her ankle and still ran away. Gu Jiao's foot was fine. Her body had been trained by her, so her recovery ability was excellent. She went to the library. There were 3 floors in the library. The first floor was the largest, where the most common books were placed. The second floor was the second largest, which contained some more professional and hard-to-find books. The third floor was the smallest, which involved the secrets of the Yen Kingdom and the State Preceptor's palace. For example, the former 6 books of the Yen Kingdom were once displayed on the third floor. Gu Jiao only went to the first floor. Yi Qing was sorting out books in front of a row of bookshelves. When he saw Gu Jiao come in, he politely greeted, "Young Master Xiao." Gu Jiao nodded, "Yi Qing." Yi Qing handed the books in his hand to the disciple beside him. "You take these 2 books out to dry. They are a little wet. I will come back later to sort out the rest." "Yes, senior brother." The disciple took the books with both hands, bowed and walked out. Yi Qing took Gu Jiao to the tea table, walked up a high step, and sat down on the opposite side of the desk. Gu Jiao sat down opposite him in the same posture. He picked up a pot of tea from the small wooden bucket filled with ice, smiled slightly, and said, "It's honey-flower tea." He first poured a cup for Gu Jiao, and then poured a cup for himself. Gu Jiao had just eaten a big bowl of noodles. To be honest, her stomach was a little full, so she just took a sip. There should be mint in the tea, which was very fragrant and pleasant. Yi Qing said with a smile, "Young Master Xiao, are you here to see my master? Master and His Majesty are on the 3rd floor, and Commandant Wang has just gone up. I guess they won't finish talking for a while. If young Master Xiao has something urgent, I can pass on a message for young Master Xiao." The disciple of the State Preceptor's palace who was serving tea for the 2 heard Yi Qing's words, and a trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. When the State Preceptor was talking with others, he never allowed anyone to disturb him, let alone pass on a message if there was no urgent matter. What was so special about this young Master Xiao? Gu Jiao didn't know that the State Preceptor was so arrogant. She thought that reporting to the State Preceptor was a routine operation, but she didn't have to see the State Preceptor. Gu Jiao took a sip of tea and asked, "Did your master teach you those secret words?" Yi Qing looked blank. "What secret words?" Gu Jiao, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. Yi Qing blurted out reflexively, "East, west, north, south, and white." Gu Jiao narrowed her eyes. "Sure enough, it's you." Shangguan Qing came to the State Preceptor's palace every 2 years and stayed for a few days every time. It was said that he had a good relationship with the disciples of the State Preceptor's palace. It was obvious that these secret words were taught by the State Preceptor. Yi Qing smiled embarrassedly. It was the imperial grandson who told young Master Xiao. It's just a few jokes. Young Master Xiao doesn't have to take it to heart. Gu Jiao snorted, "Old man, you are not serious." Yi Qing laughed dryly. Speaking of which, it was not his master who was not serious, it was the imperial grandson who was not serious. Who knew that his stomach was full of evil ideas at such a young age. He could fall asleep while studying, but he had a better memory than anyone else when it came to learning these unorthodox things. "Can I go up to your second floor to have a look?" Gu Jiao asked. Yi Qing said, "Young Master Xiao, you can." Others were not very good, they had to get the state preceptor's permission. But his master seemed to take special care of this young Master Xiao. Except for a few very special places, he could almost let young Master Xiao walk around. Gu Jiao and Yi Qing went up to the second floor. There were only 2 disciples on duty on the second floor. When the 2 saw Yi Qing, they respectfully saluted, "Big brother." Yi Qing nodded and said to the 2, "You do your thing, I will show young Master Xiao around." "Yes." The 2 stepped aside. Yi Qing said to Gu Jiao, "Young Master Xiao, please." Gu Jiao casually looked around. There were books on farming, law, arithmetic, astronomy, geography, and other relatively professional books. They were more in-depth and comprehensive than similar books on the market. Gu Jiao put the farming book back on the shelf and looked at the row of bookshelves on the right and said, "What is that over there?" There were not books on that row of bookshelves, but scrolls. Yi Qing looked and said, "Those are portraits of all the major families." Oh. This was a good opportunity to collect information. "Can I take a look?" Gu Jiao politely asked. "Of course." Yi Qing smiled and said. It was one thing for him to treat Gu Jiao with respect, but it was another thing for Gu Jiao to reciprocate with respect. This was much more comfortable to get along with than those nobles who had a smile on their face, but their words and actions were full of disdain. Gu Jiao came to the front of the bookshelves. There were originally wooden signs of the major families on the bookshelves. Today's weather was good, so the disciples who were sweeping took the wooden signs away to clean. Gu Jiao casually picked up a scroll. Yi Qing opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something, but after hesitating, he felt that it was okay. Gu Jiao opened the scroll. The portrait was of a man holding a red tasseled spear and wearing golden armor. His facial features were resolute, his eyebrows were cold, and there was a tear-drop mole under his right eye. Looking at the face in the portrait, Gu Jiao froze for a moment. Her eyes moved down. Shenyuan. Her finger just happened to press on the last word of the name. She slowly moved her finger away. The latest chapter of this book is not finished. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found on the internet are all here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_826/1069042884. HTML Genius remembered this site's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, m. zhbqg.com. Chapter 732. The latest chapter of this book is not finished. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. All the novels that can't be found online are here. Li. This is Shenyuan Li. Shenyuan Li and the king are of the same generation. If he is still alive, he should be about the same age as the king. This should be a portrait of him when he was young. Why do I have a feeling of déjà vu, as if I have seen it before? Is it the mole? Xiao Heng also has it. Or is it the red tasseled spear in his hand? This is Shenyuan Li, the former head of the Shenyuan family. Yi Qing saw that she was in a daze and introduced him to her. The Shenyuan family is a taboo in the Yen kingdom. Yi Qing is the eldest disciple of the state preceptor hall, so he has the confidence to mention it. Gu Jiao looked at it for a while, carefully put the portrait back, and opened another one. This time she looked at the name first, Shenyuan Cheng. It is also a portrait of a young man, who looks to be in his early 20s. He is wearing silver armor, holding a red tasseled spear, looks like Shenyuan Li, very heroic, and has a cinnabar mole between his eyebrows. If he were to take off his armor, he would be an elegant young master with a jade-like appearance. Yi Qing looked at the portrait and said, Shenyuan Chang was weak and sickly when he was a child. Coupled with the cinnabar mole between his eyebrows, he was always laughed at by young masters of the same age as a little girl. Then he followed his father to practice martial arts desperately, worked hard to become stronger, and finally became a famous general who can continue the legend of Shenyuan Li. Gu Jiao sighed. There is such an anecdote. The man in the portrait is tall, with fierce eyes and a murderous aura. Who would have guessed that he had such an experience when he was a child? Gu Jiao opened the third portrait of the Shenyuan Empress before she got married, and the name below is Shenyuan Hanyan. It is a portrait of her riding on a horse, quite a bit of the style of a tiger girl. Her appearance is extremely beautiful. Shangguan Yan is very similar to her, especially that pair of auspicious phoenix eyes. So it seems that Xiao Hang is also very similar to her. Gu Jiao opened the fourth portrait of a daughter of the Shenyuan family, whose name is Shenyuan Zi. Who is she? Gu Jiao asked Yi Qing. Yi Qing said pleasantly, Shenyuan Zi, the eldest daughter of the Li family, Shenyuan Cheng's younger sister, and later Prince Consort Jing. Gu Jiao was puzzled. Your Highness? Yi Qing thought for a moment and said, Yes, Duchess N. When she passed away, Crown Prince Jing had yet to inherit the house of Duke, so she was buried as the Crown Princess. Gu Jiao said subconsciously, Jing Anin's mother? Now it was Yi Qing's turn to be puzzled. Huh? Young Master Xiao, you know about it. Gu Jiao replied, Oh, it suddenly popped up in my mind. Yi Qing expressed his understanding. You have been in the capital for so long, you must have heard about the Duke Ongua's mansion. Yes, I've heard of her. Gu Jiao continued to study the woman in the portrait. This was an otherworldly face. When the facial features were taken apart, each one of them wasn't too exquisite, but when pieced together, they were beautiful. It was the kind of face that Gu Jiao liked. Gu Jiao stared at Shenyuan Zi's portrait for a long time, long enough for the last ray of light to dim. At this moment, there was a sound of knocking on the stairs from the third floor. It was a disciple who knocked over the scroll in his hand, and it rolled all over the floor. Yi Qing hurriedly went to help him pick it up. The two disciples on duty on the second floor didn't move. In the library, not only were the books and materials divided into ranks, but so were the disciples. The disciples on the first floor couldn't go up to the second floor, and couldn't peek at the things on the second floor. The disciples on the second floor couldn't go up to the third floor or touch anything related to the third floor. Therefore, only Yi Qing could help. Gu Jiao saw that the two disciples didn't move, and probably understood that it wasn't suitable for her to go, so she stayed where she was. It was just that the disciple was in a hurry, and the portrait that he picked up with great difficulty fell down again. He was in a hurry to grab the portrait, and almost fell down. Yi Qing was also in a difficult situation because of him. A scroll rolled to Gu Jiao's feet. Gu Jiao bent down and picked up the scroll, but didn't open it. She walked over and handed it to them. Here. Yi Qing took it. Thank you. There were several scrolls scattered on the ground. Gu Jiao didn't look at them, and turned around to leave. However, she caught a glimpse of a portrait out of the corner of her eye. Her first reaction was to continue to leave, but her second reaction was to suddenly stop. This time, she openly looked at the portrait. The disciple quickly rolled up the portrait and put it away. He apologized again and again. I'm sorry, senior brother. Yi Qing said with tolerance, It's okay, be careful next time. He gratefully said, Yes then, senior brother, I'm leaving. Yi Qing nodded. Go. The disciple went down to the second floor with a pile of books and portraits. The youth in the portrait lingered in Gu Jiao's mind. Not for anything else, but because the youth's face looked too much like Long Yi's. If Long Yi returned to the age of 13 or 14, he might look like that. Ordinary people couldn't completely outline a person's appearance in their mind. Even the closest parents, as long as they closed their eyes, only a vague outline was left. But Gu Jiao was a person who had received special training. She could conjure all the faces she remembered. She kept comparing Long Yi with the youth in the portrait in her mind. Could that youth be Long Yi from many years ago? Or just a person who looked similar to Long Yi?
If it was the latter, it was fine, but if it was Long Yi, from the distribution of the first and second floors, the higher you go, the more confidential it is.
The portrait just now was taken down from the 3rd floor. Even the portraits of the Shenyuan family and the 10 great families were only on the 2nd floor. Could it be that Long Yi's level of confidentiality was higher than theirs? In the study on the 3rd floor, the king and the state preceptor sat on the cushion and played chess. Wang Su waited for more than half an hour beside the two of them. Until the state preceptor's last chess piece fell, the king sighed, "You won again." The state preceptor said, "I won half a point." The king snorted, "Half a point is still a win. Don't think that I can't see that you have been giving way." The state preceptor looked at the king and said, "Your Majesty's chess skills were not so bad in the past. Your Majesty is absent-minded. Are you worried about Crown Princess?" "I am not worried about her," the king said and paused. "Also, she is not Crown Princess." The state preceptor didn't expose it. "It was obviously you who called her Crown Princess first last night." The king hesitated and asked, "Her injury, can it really be healed?"
"Yes,"
the state preceptor said without hesitation. The king looked at him suspiciously. "You are too sure." The state preceptor said, "Because she performed the operation, so I am very confident." The king frowned even more. "State preceptor, I have known you for more than 30 years, but you have never praised anyone in front of me. Is this Xiao Lulang really so outstanding?" The state preceptor said, "Yes." The king was not used to the state preceptor praising a person like this. He didn't even praise Shenyuan Li like this. "But I don't like him very much," the king said. The state preceptor poured a cup of tea for the king, because there is no respect for the imperial power in his eyes. Just like the Shenyuan family. The king's face darkened when he mentioned the Shenyuan family. The state preceptor said lightly, "Your Majesty, you don't have to worry. He is just a student from Zhao country. Besides being proficient in medical skills, knowing how to play the bow, and having some skills, he is nothing." The king frowned. "You can admit that to this extent, and you still call it nothing?" The state preceptor seemed to be in a good mood. He laughed and said, "Since ancient times, heroes come from the young." The king didn't continue this topic. The state preceptor raised his hand. A disciple who was waiting respectfully by his side came forward, intending to rearrange the chessboard. The king waved his hand. "Forget it, don't play anymore. It is getting late. I should go back to the palace." "Your Majesty." The state preceptor looked at Wang Su. Only then did the king remember that Wang Su had just come over. It was just that he was too engrossed in playing chess, so he let Wang Su wait until now. "What's the matter?" Before the king finished his words, his voice got stuck in his throat. He frowned. "How did you become like this?" Wang Su had changed back to his official uniform of Commandant Guan, but he couldn't change his pig-head face for a while. He didn't mean to smear the emperor's grandson. He just said embarrassedly, "I fell down." The state preceptor took a sip of tea and joked, "People who practice martial arts have great strength. The strength of your fall is also beyond ordinary people's reach. Ordinary people can't fall and become a pig-head." Wang Su was embarrassed. Falling down sounded better than being beaten up. Wang Su went back to the topic. He cupped his hands and reported, "I investigated the case of the Crown Princess injury and found some clues." "Oh." The king just picked up the teacup and was about to drink. Hearing this, he put down the cup and said, "Speak."
Wang Su took out a clean handkerchief from his bosom and opened it to reveal a thin strand of coarse silk.
I found this in the brambles at the crime scene.
It should be from the murderer's clothes.
Zhang Dequan took the handkerchief and handed it to the king and the state preceptor.
The state preceptor glanced at it and said, "It's coarse cloth, produced in Huaiyang County.
It's of medium quality.
Our state preceptor hall also uses this kind of cloth to make summer clothes for our disciples." The material that the disciples of the state preceptor hall could afford to wear was not ordinary material.
The king continued to look at the state preceptor.
The state preceptor picked it up and sniffed. "It doesn't have the fragrance of our state preceptor hall. It's not from the state preceptor hall."
The king. Who suspects the state preceptor hall?
The state preceptor looked at Zhang Dequan. "Who in the palace wears this kind of coarse silk?"
This.
Zhang Dequan couldn't deduce this with just a strand of coarse silk. The state preceptor said to the disciple beside him, "Go and get an identical piece of coarse cloth."
Yes. The disciple turned and left.
Not long after, he came back with a long piece of coarse cloth.
Zhang Dequan walked forward and touched it. He said in surprise, "This is the material that I'm wearing."
The state preceptor said, "It seems that it's a eunuch from the palace, and a eunuch with a rank like eunuch Zhang."
Wang Su added, "The other party didn't leave any footprints at the scene. I guess that the other party's lightness skill is very high."
There weren't many eunuchs who had lightness skill and a rank, but they couldn't rule out the possibility that the other party had been hiding their skills.
The king said in a low voice, "I'll give you one night.
If I don't see the culprit by tomorrow morning, you'll be finished as Commandant Guan."
Only one night?
This was two. But the king was a man of his word. If he couldn't find out the culprit, he could only be stripped of his official position by tomorrow. He cupped his hands and said, "Yes, sir."
It was getting late, and the king should go back.
"Where's the young princess?"
he asked Zhang Dequan.
Zhang Dequan said, "She seems to be playing with her little classmate in the garden.
Xiao Zhang is following her." Xiao Zhang was an expert in the imperial palace.
This was the state preceptor's hall, so the king was not worried about the young princess's safety. He was just worried that he had neglected her for so long that she would feel wronged and sad.
When she was sad, she would cry. When she cried, it would be earth-shattering.
"Where's the snack?" the king asked.
"It's here." Zhang Dequan carried the food box that he had prepared early in the morning.
The king took Zhang Dequan and the snack to the garden to find the young princess. Coincidentally, Gu Jiao was also looking for little Jing Kong. She also heard that the two children were playing in the garden in the afternoon. After coming out of the library pavilion, she directly came here.
Who would have thought that she didn't find little Jing Kong, but met the king instead? When the king saw Gu Jiao, his mind involuntarily flashed with Gu Jiao's words, "If I'm cured, won't you bring your head to thank me?" The king's heart was burning with anger. Shangguan Yen was injured and settled down. He thought that no one would come to anger him. But now, he didn't know where this Xiao Lulang came from.
The state preceptor was right. This kid's eyes didn't have any respect for the imperial power, so naturally, he didn't fear the king. He stood there with an indomitable spirit. In a trance, the king seemed to see the figure of Shenyuan Cheng.
Why wasn't it Shenyuan Li?
It was probably because when the king knew Shenyuan Li was no longer a teenager. He only saw the appearance of the young Shenyuan Cheng in bright clothes.
"Why don't you kneel when you see me?" "Why should I kneel? I'm the king."
"You're not my king."
"I'm from the Zhao kingdom."
The king had lived for more than half of his life, but he had never seen such an arrogant person.
The king's eyes became dangerous.
At this moment, a little eunuch hurriedly came and whispered a few words to Zhang Dequan. Zhang Dequan was relieved and said to the king, "Your Majesty, the young princess is in the Qilin Hall. Let's go find her quickly. Otherwise, if she can't see you, she will cry again. Once the sky turns dark, she will look for you. Have you forgotten?" The king thought of the crying Shangguan Shui and decided to let this kid go for the time being. He walked towards the Qilin Hall with a sullen face.
Gu Jiao also wanted to go back to the Qilin Hall. If the young princess was there, little Jing Kong must be there too. The king only thought that she was going to take care of the crown princess. He frowned and didn't say anything. At this moment, the sky was completely dark. Usually, at this time, if the young princess didn't see him, she would cry until the entire harem was restless. Thinking of this, the king quickened his pace. 100 ways to comfort the young princess flashed in his mind. In the end, when he reached the entrance of the Qilin Hall, he was stunned by the scene in front of him. The young princess and little Jing Kong stood on the left and right of the entrance. Their small bodies were straight and their small arms were behind their backs, like two little mascots. Two small heads swayed at the same time and sang cutely. You love me ah, I love you, da 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 sweet honey, you love me ah, I love you, da 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 sweet honey. After singing for half an hour, the entire country learned it. The king, Gu Jiao, digression, Jiao Jiao, cough, I only taught a few old songs from 100 years ago. Karaoke song list. Honey Snow Ice City theme song. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896488264. HTML Genius remembered the website address in a second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, zhbqg.com. Chapter 733. Please scan the QR code below to download the app for more exciting content. The novel was updated more quickly. Millions of novels were free to read. There were all kinds of novels that couldn't be found on the internet. The two little kids couldn't stop singing. They were surrounded by disciples of the State Preceptor Hall. The monarch's mood suddenly became a little complicated. What happened to the promised wailing? What happened to finding Uncle His Majesty when it got dark? The little lass must have forgotten that she had an uncle. If he didn't interrupt her, she would shake her head and sing until tomorrow. The monarch snorted coldly. Humph, I've never seen her so playful. It was already dark, but she was still so happy that she didn't want to go home. Zhang Dequan smiled and said, It's rare for the little princess to meet such a playmate. The monarch laughed and said, You don't have many playmates in the past? Zhang Dequan smiled and said, Isn't that different? The playmates in the past were all young masters and daughters sent by aristocratic families. They were specially chosen to be good-tempered and gentle. They were also taught the rules at home. They knew that Shangguan Shui was the princess of the royal family and they couldn't make her unhappy. Otherwise, the monarch would blame them and their parents would suffer. Who could let go of her then? They were very careful, and the little princess didn't have much fun. Little Jing Kong didn't know the little princess's identity. He only thought that she was an ordinary child and didn't have any scruples when playing with her. In fact, even if little Jing Kong knew, he wouldn't have any scruples. When he was in Zhao State, he and the Prince Qin Chuyu were good friends. The Emperor of Zhao State had never used his identity to ask little Jing Kong to play with him. Little Jing Kong was used to it. In addition, Gu Jiao taught him at home. He only knew how to treat people sincerely and didn't know how to look at people with colored eyes. The monarch stood in the most eye-catching position. The little girl should have rushed over when she saw him. However, she didn't. The young Canton princess sang happily and did not even look in the direction of the monarch. The monarch was deeply ignored by the little girl for the first time. When little Jing Kong saw Gu Jiao, he immediately stopped playing the brainwashing song. When Xiao Hang picked up little Jing Kong, he told him about the new situation. Little Jing Kong knew that his bad brother-in-law had changed his identity again. He was used to it and could accept it very well. He had to restrain himself from getting too close to Jiao Jiao in front of outsiders. Jing Kong, why aren't you singing? The young princess also stopped. Little Jing Kong nodded and pointed at the sky. Look, the moon is out. We should go home. The young princess looked up and nodded her head. Then we'll sing again tomorrow. As soon as she finished speaking, the young princess jumped down the stairs and pounced in the direction of the monarch. Only then did the monarch's expression soften a little. He opened his arms slightly and waited to catch the little fellow. Who would have thought that the little fellow would run right past him? Teacher. The young princess came in front of Gu Jiao and bowed very politely. The monarch was so angry that his wrinkles were twitching. Little Jing Kong was picked up by the young princess to the state preceptor palace. Since the young princess was leaving, she naturally had to send him back too. Little Jing Kong waved his hand. No, my sister will come to the state preceptor palace to pick me up later. Okay, I was thinking that we could go back together. I'll go first then. Goodbye. Goodbye. The two little kids said goodbye to each other. The young princess had a pleasant and fulfilling day. She felt refreshed on the way back. She completely forgot why she came to the state preceptor palace. When the monarch's face darkened and he wanted to remind her, she lay back on the soft couch and fell asleep. She played for a whole day and didn't take a nap. It was too tiring to be a child. The monarch was speechless. On the other side, little Jing Kong was Gu Jiao's little tail in the wing room for a while. It was time for him to go back. Little Jing Kong crossed his arms and snorted. He squinted at Xiao Heng. But can you still go back to the academy now? Why don't you ask for leave for me and let me come here? In this way, he could be with Jiao Jiao every day. Haha. He was so witty. The little fellow was so proud that he shook his feet. Since Xiao Hang had become Shangguan Qing, he really couldn't go back to the academy. Otherwise, it would be too suspicious if he disappeared in broad daylight for a whole day. Xiao Hang certainly could choose to ask for leave for both him and little Jing Kong. But Xiao Hang didn't do so. Children can't study for 3 days and 2 days. As Xiao Hang spoke, he took out a set of clothes from the Kanglan Women's Academy. He went back to the Linglong Pavilion to pick up little Jing Kong. He held the clothes and came to Gu Chengfeng. Gu Chengfeng's heart skipped a beat. What are you doing? Xiao Hang pointed at little Jing Kong. You can be his sister. Gu Chengfeng felt like he was struck by lightning. Why me? Gu Chengfeng refused. I'm different from you. I'm not as tall as you. Xiao Hang agreed. He calmly turned around and took out a pair of ancient high heels from his bag. Gu Chengfeng was speechless. Gu Chengfeng started his hard life of going to school during the day and doing part-time work, singing opera, at night. After Wang Su left the state preceptor's hall, he went to the imperial palace without stopping. He was investigating the case under the imperial edict and had the right to mobilize the eunuchs in the imperial palace. He started from the 12 imperial colleges. All the eunuchs who wore that kind of clothes had to be interrogated by the commandery. He sat in the hall of the commandery of the left. The eunuchs in charge of the 12 imperial colleges were lined up in the center of the hall. On the surface, these 12 eunuchs didn't know martial arts. But they didn't have the final say. Wang Su wanted to test it himself. If a person had a strong qinggong, he must also have a good internal force. To test whether a person had internal force or not, one was to see how he made a move. The other was to directly inject his internal force into the other party's meridians. The latter would make the person who was tested feel a certain degree of pain. The weaker the martial arts, the more painful it would be. Now that he was investigating the case, he couldn't care about this. He looked at the crowd and said, "Stewards, I'm sorry to offend you." He started with the ceremony supervisor. He pinched the ceremony supervisor's wrist. As soon as his internal force entered his body, a thin layer of sweat appeared on the other party's forehead. There were calluses on his palm. He only practiced a little martial arts. His internal force wasn't strong enough. He wasn't the murderer who assassinated Shangguan Yen.
Then, he tested the 7 eunuchs in charge of the Imperial College and the treasure's supervisor. They didn't have any internal force at all. Surprisingly, the 4 eunuchs in charge of the Divine Palace supervisor, the Imperial College supervisor, the prefect supervisor, and the design supervisor were all masters. This was not surprising. To be able to mix in the Imperial Palace today, who didn't have some hidden skills? Wang Su knew the way of power, so he didn't blame them for concealing. However, the monarch wanted to find the murderer, so these 4 people were very suspicious. But after he checked the whereabouts of the 4 people, he found that the 4 of them had perfect alibis last night. And the 4 people's clothes didn't have any big flaws. If the clothes were damaged, they could be mended. A good embroiderer could mend the clothes seamlessly. Wang Su ordered his subordinate, "Bring me the scorpion box." "Yes." The subordinate went to the storeroom and brought back an iron box with both hands. Wang Su said to the several managers, "This is a blue-tailed scorpion. It's extremely poisonous. 1 bite is enough to kill a dead man. There's no antidote." After he said that, he opened the handkerchief, revealing a strand of silk. "This is the evidence left by the murderer at the scene. Now, I'll put it in the scorpion box. The poisonous scorpions inside will remember its smell. In a moment, I'll have to trouble the 4 of you to stretch out your hands. The 4 of you can rest assured that they are all poisonous scorpions. They won't bite anything that smells different from the evidence." The 4 people were a little hesitant. Wang Su smiled faintly. After throwing Gu'asi into the box, he tried to put his hand into the metal box. After a while, he took his hand out. There was no trace of being bitten. They heaved a sigh of relief. "I'll go first," the Divine Palace supervisor said. Wang Su winked at his subordinate. The subordinate came in front of him with the iron box. The Divine Palace supervisor put his hand into the hole in the lid of the box. "It's done," Wang Su said. The steward of the Divine Palace was relieved. Next, the managers of the Department of Setup and the prefect of the prefect also put their hands into the scorpion box one by one. The 2 of them were safe and sound. When it was the palace supervisor's turn, there was a trace of struggle in his eyes. His arm was stiff, and he was reluctant to put his hand in. Wang Su shouted, "It's him. Take him down." There were poisonous scorpions in the scorpion box, but they weren't the most poisonous blue-tailed scorpions. They were just a few ordinary scorpions, and they were covered with a layer of barbed wire. Even if the murderer really put his hand in, he wouldn't be bitten at all. This was a psychological attack. Obviously, the other party had lost. The guards of the prefect commandery swarmed forward. The other 3 managers also quickly reacted and wanted to catch the palace supervisor next to them. However, this person's lightness skill was too good. He rushed out with a leap. Wang Su said coldly, "Go after him." The guards of the prefect commandery chased after him. But they couldn't catch up with him at all. In the blink of an eye, he escaped from the palace. Wang Su was so angry that he gritted his teeth. "Split into 3. You 2 teams will flank him from the front and back streets. The rest of you, follow me." Wang Su relied on his absolute advantage of being familiar with the terrain. After a quarter of an hour, he successfully blocked the other party into a dead end. Wang Su said coldly, "I advise you to surrender obediently. Don't make a futile struggle. You know the king's means very well. Death is not scary. What's scary is that you'll suffer a fate worse than death." A ferocious glint flashed across the eyes of the palace supervisor. He flew over and injured a guard of the prefect commandery. He seized the other party's sword and fought with Wang Su's group. Only then did Wang Su realize that he had underestimated the other party's martial arts. The dozen or so of them were completely powerless against the other party. Wang Su personally fought, but unfortunately, he was defeated in 10 moves. What a powerful opponent! When did such an expert sneak into the palace supervisor? Wang Su blocked the other party's attack with his sword. He gritted his teeth and said, "Who are you? Who sent you to assassinate the deposed princess?" The other party didn't waste words with Wang Su and slashed at his arm.
Wang Su fell to the ground, blood splattering everywhere. The other party raised the sword in his hand and ruthlessly stabbed at Wang Su's heart. Even if he died, he wanted to drag someone down with him. Wang Su knew that he couldn't escape. He subconsciously closed his eyes. However, the sword didn't land. An extremely sharp sword Qi carried a majestic momentum and was as fast as lightning. It fiercely sent the other party flying into the wall behind him. Wang Su opened his eyes and turned his head to look. He saw an ink-clothed man holding a sword at the entrance of the alley under the moonlight. Wasn't this the expert by the emperor's grandson's side that knocked him out with a stick? Why did he come? And he sent that troublesome fellow flying with a single move? The palace supervisor crawled up while holding his chest. He fiercely wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His sword fell to the ground, but he didn't pick it up. He clearly couldn't beat Gu Chongqing, so he decided to escape. He tapped his feet and flew onto the roof. He jumped onto the roof and vaulted over the walls, gradually disappearing into the night. Wang Su said in shock, "He's the murderer. Quickly chase after him." Gu Chongqing lightly said, "This fellow is a good opponent. It's a pity to catch him like this." Wang Su was confused. "How come I don't understand?" The palace supervisor ran for a while and found that the expert didn't chase after him. He sneered, "Heh, what's the use of having high martial arts? Haven't I still shaken you off?" Just as he finished speaking, a stick came at him and smashed him down from the roof. "Damn you!" He cursed and fell flat on the ground. Gu Jiao tapped his feet and landed in front of him. He tapped his palm with a rolling pin and calmly walked towards him. "Want to fight, brother?" The palace supervisor was speechless. 15 minutes later, when Wang Su rushed to the scene with his injured arm, the palace supervisor had already been beaten to the point that he couldn't even move his fingers. He looked at Wang Su with excitement in his eyes, as if he had seen his savior. Gu Jiao stood to the side with a refreshed expression. Gu Chongqing walked over and asked softly, "How is it?" Gu Jiao said, "It's okay. He can't take too much beating." Gu Chongqing seriously reflected, "Then I'll pay more attention next time. I won't cripple as many meridians as possible." Wang Su was dumbfounded. "What are you guys talking about? Isn't the main point the case? Pay more attention next time? What do you want next time?" Gu Jiao left him with a few breaths, so he could be interrogated. However, this person was very stubborn. He smiled contemptuously. "I didn't do anything. No one ordered me. You guys give up." "I don't know anything." "Is that so?" Gu Jiao looked at him condescendingly, took out a hallucinogen from the first aid kit, and injected it. Digression. Without further ado, he squatted down 2 monthly votes. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/1068782009. HTML Genius memorized the website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 734. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel will be updated more quickly. Millions of novels will be read for free. Novels that can't be found on the internet are all available here. Wang Su looked at Gu Jiao with a dumbfounded expression. "Why did you give him a needle?" "To extort a confession." Gu Jiao said. "You can extort a confession with a needle?" Wang Su expressed his disbelief. Gu Jiao didn't tell him that it was a hallucinogen, lest he overthink and think that Gu Jiao was manipulating the murderer's confession. Gu Jiao looked at the murderer lying on the ground. His tense body gradually relaxed and understood that he was hallucinating. She couldn't let him go too deep, otherwise, he would completely lose contact with the outside world and wouldn't be able to hear the outside world. Gu Jiao tapped his shoulder with a rolling pin and said seriously, "If you don't want to suffer more, then hurry up and tell me, who is the murderer?" Gu Jiao had already knocked the person unconscious and waited until Wang Su came to hear the news. She wanted Wang Su to hear the murderer's name with his own ears. The murderer didn't struggle too much and honestly confessed. However, the name he gave was not the person in Gu Jiao and Gu Chongqing's mind. "Who is Li Ping?" Gu Jiao asked Wang Su. Wang Su thought for a moment. He shouldn't be talking about Li Ping, but concubine Li, the imperial concubine in the palace. In order to confirm his guess, Wang Su asked him a few more details about concubine Li's order. He was in a state of confusion, so he didn't hold back and said everything he remembered in his mind. From the testimony, it was indeed concubine Li who ordered him to assassinate Shangguan Yen. Concubine Li didn't tell him why she wanted to kill Shangguan Yen. Concubine Li and he had no intersection. It was by chance that she bumped into his affair with a palace maid. In the great Yen imperial palace, eunuchs and palace maids were forbidden to eat each other. Concubine Li threatened him to help her get rid of Shangguan Yen. Did concubine Li and Shangguan Yen have a grudge? Gu Jiao asked. Wang Su fell silent. Concubine Li had only been in the palace for a few years, while Shangguan Yen had been imprisoned in the imperial mausoleum more than 10 years ago. There was no intersection between the two. It was impossible to say that they were having a holiday. But Wang Su's silence wasn't because of this. It was because concubine Li was very close to an imperial concubine in the inner palace. Gu Jiao looked at Wang Su. "Who?" Wang Su said with a serious expression, "Consort Wan." Consort Wan, whose surname was Mu, was Old Master Mu's biological daughter and Mu Qingchen's mother's sister. Concubine Li had no one to rely on in the inner palace. In the beginning, her days were very difficult. It was only after she was able to rely on Wan Fei that she went from a small servant to the present concubine Li. Gu Jiao was puzzled. Consort Wan and Shangguan Yen have a grudge? There are indeed conflicts. Wang Su sighed. That was when Shangguan Yen returned to Chengdu with his 1-year-old grandson. Consort Wan whispered to the servants in private, saying that who knows if the child was a bastard picked up from outside. At that time, Shangguan Yen, who was still the crown princess, heard it. After Shangguan Yen slapped Consort Wan, she was still angry and punished Consort Wan to kneel in the imperial garden as a warning. At that time, Consort Wan was still not an imperial concubine, but a concubine, but it was still very embarrassing. Gu Jiao touched her chin. The crown princess has so much power. Wang Su said, with the support of Empress Shenyuan and the Shenyuan family, of course, her power is great. Besides, she is the only legitimate child. After the emperor and the empress, she is the most honorable. It's like the Shenyuan family style. So it seems that Shangguan Yen is very protective of Shao Qing. Gu Jiao said, "It's useless for us to guess blindly here. Whether concubine Li was ordered by Consort Wan or not, we have to ask concubine Li." Wang Su thought deeply. "I'll go to the palace." "Wait." Gu Jiao stopped him. "Huh?" Wang Su was stunned. Gu Jiao pointed to his arm. "Your injury." "Ah, this." Wang Su forgot that he was injured. He suddenly felt a little uncomfortable and coughed lightly. "It's not a serious injury." Having said that, when Gu Jiao came to him with a first aid kit, he reluctantly offered his arm. Gu Jiao took out a cotton swab with iodine from the first aid kit and gave him 3 stitches. Because of the anesthetic, it doesn't hurt at all. Wang Su looked at Gu Jiao with a complicated look. His heart was moved. Thank you." Gu Jiao stretched out her hand, 1 silver coin. Wang Su. After Wang Su gave the money, he brought the murderer back to the rearguard commandery with a dark face. Looking at the two people's back, Gu Chongqing asked, "Is he the murderer?" He was referring to the eunuch. Gu Jiao said, "It's him. I saw the crescent-shaped scar on the back of his right hand." Just now, Shangguan Yen woke up for a little while. Gu Jiao took the opportunity to ask her about the murderer. Shangguan Yen didn't see the murderer's appearance, but she grabbed the murderer's hand and touched the scar on the back of his hand. Gu Chongqing's eyes were deep. "It's not Imperial concubine Han." Yes, they all thought that the mastermind behind the scenes must be the Crown Prince's mother. Wang Su took the murderer back to the rearguard commandery, locked the murderer in the prison, and hurried to report to the emperor. The emperor asked Zhang Dequan to bring concubine Li. Who knew that Zhang Dequan only brought back news of concubine Li. "Your Majesty, concubine Li hanged herself." The next day before dawn, the entire harem knew that concubine Wan instigated concubine Li to murder Shangguan Yen. Concubine Wan was banished to the cold palace. The emperor originally wanted to take away her imperial concubine position and demote her to noble lady. It was concubine Wang Xian who interceded and temporarily kept her position. Shangguan Yen was no longer the crown princess. She was just a concubine, and she attempted to commit murder. Such a punishment was extremely heavy for an imperial concubine. Concubine Wan cried and screamed. Concubine Wang Xian asked her to stay in the cold palace for a while. When the emperor's anger subsided, she would find a way to save her. Even the empress didn't come out. "How can I come out?" At the entrance of the palace, concubine Wan was crying and gasping for breath. Concubine Wang Xian patted her shoulder to comfort her. "His Majesty is angry, give me some time." Concubine Wan grabbed concubine Wang Xian's hand tightly. "I didn't do it. It really wasn't me. Sister concubine Xian, please believe me." Concubine Wang Xian sighed helplessly. "It's useless for me to believe you. His Majesty must believe you." Zhang Dequan urged. "Concubine Wan, please." Concubine Wan glared at Zhang Dequan fiercely. "You dog." Usually, it's concubine Wan. Now that she's going to enter the cold palace, he doesn't even call her concubine Wan. A luxurious carriage carried by 4 people slowly passed by the door of concubine Wan's palace. On the carriage, the graceful and noble imperial concubine Han lightly raised her hand to the accompanying eunuch. The carriage stopped. Imperial concubine Han and concubine Wang Xian were the first group of people to serve the emperor. They already have grandchildren, but because of proper maintenance, they look like they're in their early 40s. She looked at concubine Wan with a smile. "Oh, concubine Wan is leaving?" When concubine Wang Xian's love waned, she brought the Mu family's first daughter into the palace to help her. Losing concubine Wan was like losing an arm. Concubine Wan angrily glared at her, stepped forward, and pointed at imperial concubine Han. "It must be you. You framed me. You killed concubine Li. It's you. It's all you." Imperial concubine Han raised her chin and smiled mockingly. "It's better for concubine Wan to say this in front of His Majesty. If His Majesty also thinks that this concubine did it, this concubine will bring my luggage and move to the cold palace to accompany you without His Majesty's order." "You." Concubine Wang Xian shook her head at concubine Wan, indicating that she should calm down. Imperial concubine Han dusted the handkerchief in her hand, looked forward, and said indifferently, "Bring a few more quilts. I heard that the cold palace is cold." Concubine Wan was about to explode with anger, but it was useless to be angry now. She was forced into the cold palace by this Han B***TCH. Zhang Dequan urged him again. "I'll have to trouble eunuch Zhang to wait a moment," concubine Wang Xian said politely, and had a palace maid give Zhang Dequan a bag of gold. Zhang Dequan accepted it and whispered, "A quarter of an hour, it can't be any later. This servant still has to report to His Majesty." Concubine Wang Xian nodded and comforted concubine Wan for a while. Concubine Wan wiped her tears with a handkerchief and said with red eyes, "Sister concubine Wang, help me take care of the 6th prince. That B***TCH is vicious and merciless."
She dares to harm me like this. I'm worried that she will harm the sixth prince. The sixth prince, the only underage prince in the harem, was the youngest son of the monarch. Concubine Wang Xian held her hand and said earnestly, I know. I will bring him to Xianfu Palace and won't let anyone have a chance to hurt him. Listen to me, when you go to the cold palace, don't throw a tantrum. Concubine Wan was taken away by Zhang Dequan. Concubine Wang Xian sent a eunuch to the Imperial Academy to pick up the sixth prince from school. When she returned to her bedroom, she met Imperial Concubine Han, who was admiring the flowers in the Imperial Garden. Concubine Wang Xian coldly looked at Imperial Concubine Han and said, You really went too far this time. Imperial Concubine Han took a deep look at her and sneered, Oh. At dawn, the State Preceptor Palace also received the news that Concubine Wan was punished. Shangguan Yen hasn't woken up yet. In the room, 3 people sat opposite each other. Xiao Hang, Gu Jiao, and Gu Chongqing. I didn't expect that Concubine Wan would take the blame. Gu Jiao said, It's really the Han family style. They all like to make others take the blame. The opponent is very strong. Gu Chongqing said, It's not because of the strength of force, but because of the shrewdness and scheming. It's not terrible to have such a person in a family. If everyone's brain is so smart, it's no wonder that they can compete for the position of the first family. This is a very tricky family. But Xiao Hang didn't have the slightest fear in his heart. On the contrary, a strange desire for power was faintly born in his blood. This is probably Gu Jiao's mood when he sees a master. It's just that Gu Jiao is purely competing. He's more sinister. He wants to take advantage of the situation and not spit out the bones. The Han family and the Wang family are the 2 biggest fish. If the Han family wants to eat all the fish, then let them eat it. The 10 great families are not innocent. When the Shenyuan family was destroyed and the crown princess was persecuted, each family stabbed a knife. He doesn't sympathize with Concubine Wan. Just like in the past, no one sympathized with Shenyuan Han Yen, who was banished to the cold palace. The Han family is a good knife. Xiao Hang lowered his eyes and rubbed the blade in his hand. Next, let's make this knife sharper. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642-82642-826/10686344. HTML Genius remembers this site's address in a second. www.zhbqg.com BQ mobile version reading website, zhbqg.com. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.